Welcome to the inaugural meeting of the Board of Environmental Safety. My name is Jessica Swan, and I'm a public participation specialist for the Department of Toxic Substances Control. I will be assisting and facilitating today's meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and by your continued participation is acknowledgement that you are being recorded. You may be muted at any time during this meeting. Today is March 30th, 2022, and the time is 1:05 p.m. Meeting is now called to order. Sushma Bhatia?
Here.
Thank you. Georgette Gomez? Alexis Strauss-Hacker?
Here.
Lizette Ruiz?
I'm not sure. Here and present.
Thank you. We have 5 of 5 board members. All are present and quorum is established. Secretary Blumenfeld, if you would like to provide your opening remarks.
Happy to. Thanks, team. Thanks, Jeannie. Thanks to the entire board. Really fantastic to be with you all today. Many of you have fought for decades to see this moment come to realization. And I couldn't be prouder of each and every one of the advocates and community members and the regulated community and staff, and really want to lift up and celebrate the 5 inaugural board members, each of them incredible in their own right, and start by wishing them well. It's really a victory for transparency, for inclusion, for making sure that each California community's voices are heard, and couldn't come at a more important moment, or at a moment really where we need to make sure that communities are relieved from their burden of toxicity. And so in the 3 years since Meredith and I and the DTSC team have been here, a huge amount has been accomplished, and I feel like we're now ready at a point that we can have a open, incredibly constructive dialogue with this board. And so you as Meredith will say later, are really at a place that I think that collaboration with the public, the collaboration with the communities that need our help, and with the regulated community can happen. So this is about partnership. It's also about accountability. We want to make sure that we daylight for the public the key metrics, and one of the hallmarks of Meredith and Francesca Nigri, who you will hear from also in subsequent meetings, if not today, is about making sure that we have strategic plan, key performance indicators, and that you understand where we are on that journey. The public understands. I particularly want to thank, later in the program, you're going to hear from Assembly Member Cristina Garcia. Her commitment to this reform effort was second to none, as was Governor Newsom, Ana Mata Santos, and many, many people, Angela Pontes in the governor's office. This would not have happened without a very large collaborative effort between the legislature, the public, DTSC, and really the governor led on this from day one. So this is a also important moment because of the significant infusion of funding that was provided by the legislature and governor last year to this department. Its ability to really move to scale, the ambition and the ability to fulfill the promise. And I think it's turning a new leaf in the page of DTSC. Now when I hear about DTSC, it's always in like, can you believe all that they've done? Can you believe the workload analysis that they got done? We need to do that if we want to change our organization. Can you believe the incredible people that they've been able to find and select for their new board? Can you believe they're all women? How great is that? Which shouldn't stand out as a necessarily in 2022, but I'm really excited that that the energy that you're all bringing. So in conclusion, I'm really excited to work with you. I will be here every turn of this journey. It won't always be easy. There's a lot of historical contamination in the state. There's a lot of environmental injustice in our state. And often we think about that in the context of the Air Resources Board or the Water Board or pesticides. A lot of it falls in this space, which is communities that have been contaminated, communities like those represented by Assemblymember Garcia in Vernon and Maywood and other parts of the Vernon world, where Exide was a company that was basically polluting and then went into bankruptcy to avoid their obligation. We need to hold polluters accountable. And I think polluters today will be thinking differently about how they act, because we have a DTSC board that will be looking. We have a DTSC board that will be tenacious in its focus on investigating and making sure that the polluter pays. And at the same time, really pushing forward a new vision, which I think is where the governor's most excited, which is this vision of how we think about making sure we take toxic materials out of production. Why do we still have PFAS, PFOA, all kinds of chemicals in production that we know will be in our environment forever? So we need to focus on cleaning up the past at the same time as making sure that we continue to set the global trend on taking toxic chemicals out of production. Ultimately, my measure of success for all of us collectively is whether we're improving the lives of Californians every day. We sometimes get very academic, we can get very process driven. Ultimately, we need to look at how this year are we making sure that the lives of Californians are improved by the actions that we engage in. So this is a very exciting moment. I could not be more thrilled with each of you being on this board, and I look forward to a long partnership as we move forward. And final words is we could not have a better head of the Department of Toxic Substance Control than Dr. Meredith Williams. She is not only incredibly intelligent and strategic, but she's very compassionate and empathetic and understands the real plight of people who are living in fear or living under the crushing pressure of toxic facilities near them. So we are in an incredibly good, safe pair of hands with Meredith, and I just want to thank her and each of you as we move forward with this new board. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me. I'm Assemblywoman Cristina Garcia, and I represent the 58th Assembly District, and I am excited to be here as the chair of the Women's Caucus. I'm excited that this is an all-women board. Things are going to get done, is my experience when I see this many women leading together. My community has been treated like a dump, a wasteland all my life and longer. And Exide is just one example of the many issues that we're dealing with. We have lead, arsenic, chromium, PFAS, you name it, we have it. My sister and I used to make a joke growing up that we would be geniuses if we hadn't grown up where we grew up because of all the toxics that were in us, because we had this gut feeling of what we saw around us, but we didn't have the data and the information or the research. But as time has moved on, that joke has turned into reality for a lot of my community members out there. And we know that these toxics are both shortening our lives, but for our young individuals and our students being born in this toxic, it's also impeding their ability to learn and develop properly as well. And so I am excited to be here. It's tempered excitement because we have agencies that have failed us over the years, but excited that you will bring a tenacious energy to hold polluters accountable, because your success means my communities will be healthier. Your failure means that my community will be sicker and will continue to die sooner than we should out there. And so I really want this to be successful for bettering all of Californians' lives, but really for bettering our most marginalized communities' lives and starting to give us hope. And so the task ahead of you is large, both from the policy side of things, but also from the building trust side of things. But I want to wish you the best. I'm here to be a partner in this fight because I want you to be successful. And I fought hard over the years to reform this department. I fought hard over the last 3 years, specifically with AB 995, AB 1, and finally SB 158. And it's exciting to see that work come to life here as well. And I fought hard because I believed that a board like you have today would make my communities healthier in the long haul. And so while your life in this board is about toxics, for me, it translates into the public's health across California for our most marginalized communities who continue to fight. They were doing the work long before I got here, and it's a relay, and I'm just part of that relay as you are part of the relay, but I want to recognize those community members who've been doing the fight. And I want to also thank the administration, the governor, our Secretary of Kelly Pager, Blumenfeld, and Meredith, who have been great partners in this fight over the years as well, and will continue to be great partners, not just with myself, but with you and with the community as well. And so as you heard, I am optimistic. I want to see transparency. I want to see good action, and I want to see that we're prioritizing our most vulnerable communities. I've been able to read up on all of your bios, and I know that collectively we have strong voices for our communities, and I have a lot of faith as well. So I'll keep my comments brief because I want you to get to work. The list is long, and so just thank you for taking this challenge on with much appreciation and heart from myself and my community.
I will do a very brief intro. Very excited to be here. Thank you for all of your work in bringing us together today. It's a very historic moment. I will keep my introduction fairly short. You've all seen my bio, so you know that I'm a chemical engineer by training. I've spent close to 13 years in the environmental field, running risk assessments, submitting permit applications, and also working for government to design programs and policies to enhance environmental health. This before I moved to the corporate world and started working with technology companies to really understand systems thinking and applying myself to more global problems. But some things you don't see in my bio that I'd love to share with you today is that I grew up as a sick kid. I was an asthmatic, living in a poor neighborhood in Mumbai, India. While I have come a long way and have a lot of privilege, this early childhood experience is what drives my passion and energy for the environmental field and work. The other thing you also don't see from my bio is from having worked both in the private and public sectors, I often think about the concept of future-proofing, how we can collectively scale and amplify our outcomes. How do we make decisions in the face of imperfect science? And as Jared said, how do we take toxic chemicals out of production and really future-proof California? So this is the lens I expect to bring to the work we will all do collectively. I expect to work closely with the rest of this board, with our executive officer, with the DTSE team, with the various stakeholders and community groups to adopt a strategic plan that brings to life this promise of safer communities in California. As we heard from Assemblywoman Cristina Garcia, this work is not going to be easy. So we need each and every one of your help. We need to understand your concerns. And in return, we will listen deeply, as Chairwoman Jeannie shared earlier. So please reach out. We are accessible. We're human. We're Californians. We're here to help you.
I can go ahead and introduce myself. Good afternoon. I'm Alexis Strauss-Hackard. I'm honored to join this Board of Environmental Safety, and I will work hard to fulfill the trust and responsibilities that have been placed upon us. I worked for 40 years at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in different roles. I spent years in the hazardous waste and Superfund programs, working on site cleanups and enforcement with private parties and government agencies. I was EPA's water director for 20 years, and then the deputy regional administrator and acting regional administrator, working directly with communities, tribes, local governments, and those that we regulate. I will continue to serve as a member of the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. I care deeply about public service and will strive to bring integrity and transparency to everything I do on this board. Thank you to all who worked so hard to establish and launch this board. We will not fail you. And now to my colleague, Lizette Ruiz.
So thank you. My name is Lizette Ruiz, and I'm from Southgate, California, Southeast LA. As somebody who grew up and has lived most of my life here in Southeast LA within a pollution overburdened neighborhood, who very often sat at the other end of meetings in front of various boards and committees like this, it is an honor to be a part of this board, whom I believe has the opportunity to lead our state towards a future where everyone can live, work, worship, and play in environmentally safe communities. I myself grew up in Huntington Park, in an area bordering the industrial city of Vernon. For the first years of my life, I lived within the Exide lead fallout zone and moved after to the other side of Huntington Park, where when I was 8 years old, a cement recycler practically appeared overnight across the street from our home. It didn't take very long for a pile of cement debris from the 1994 Northridge earthquake freeway collapse to pile up to about 80 feet high, becoming so visible in our community that we soon called it La Montaña, or the mountain in English. We soon felt the respiratory health effects from this fine dust, known as particulate matter, that blew over our neighborhood and into our homes, giving many of us, including my siblings and I, nosebleeds and never-ending coughs. My dog's throat actually swelled up within the first few months that La Montaña showed up. And unfortunately, we soon had to put her to sleep because we just didn't have the money for her health care. Other dogs in our neighborhood didn't last very long either. With seeing these effects, it didn't take very long for my parents and other neighbors to reach out to Communities for a Better Environment, known as CBE, who helped us finally shut this facility down. And in its stead now sits Linda Marquez High School, named after the person who led the organizing effort, my neighbor, friend, and mentor, Linda Marquez. Que en paz y en poder descanse. May she rest in peace and in power. Companies like the cement recycler aren't unique in neighborhoods like mine. Many have operated for decades without proper regulatory oversight. Throughout my years being involved with CBE since 1997, we have fought against many environmental injustices throughout California and in Southeast LA in particular. We have organized and kept the power plant from being built here in my city of Southgate, shut down Central Metal, a metal recycling facility that actually is situated next to my niece's home, and that for many years spewed out several contaminants into the air and soil and groundwater, and led to the effort, and we also led to shut down the battery recycler Exide. I was involved in founding the all-powerful Youth for Environmental Justice group within CBE in 1997, a group that has continued to take the torch to fight environmental injustices and has accomplished many things since my tenure there. Growing up in the environmental justice movement has led me to a career as an environmental scientist, where for the past 11 years, I have been involved in work aimed at identifying possible contaminated sites and have conducted subsurface and air sampling to determine and identify contaminants of concern, and had led subsequent contamination cleanup efforts in the private field. During the mid-2000s, I was co-founder of a queer youth organizing group called Q-Team, and have served as a board member for CBE for the past 20 years, and have also served as the Southeast and within the Southeast LA AB 617 Community Steering Committee member for the past couple of years. And I'm also currently co-chair of the Southgate Community Health Action Team. As a member of this board, I hope to serve as a link to the environmental justice community throughout our beautiful state, and hope to serve all of those who, like us, work to achieve healthy communities where everybody in our state, despite the color of our skin, sexual orientation, legal status, or economic status, can have access to clean water, clean air, clean soil, and can live in peace. Thank you so much, and I really look forward to working with everybody on this board, and I would like to turn this back to the chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we will begin our initial public forum period. This is for items that are not listed on the agenda. So at this time, any member of the public may address and ask questions of the board relating to any matter within its jurisdiction, so long as the matter is not on the agenda or pending before the board. The board may not discuss or take any action on any matter raised during the public forum, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda for a future meeting. We invite you at this time to raise your hand from your Zoom toolbar, press *9 to raise your hand if you are calling in on the English line. So we invite you to raise your hands at this time if you would like to make a comment on a non-agenda item. I do see one hand at this time, Christine Rowe. I'm going to give you permission to talk. If you would please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Yes, my name is Christine Rowe. I have a bachelor's in health education from Cal State Northridge. I started my master's in public health, took one class in environmental health, and because of the Northridge earthquake and family responsibilities, I was unable to complete my master's in public health. I am here. I am very involved in the Santa Susana Field Lab cleanup. I've been a technical stakeholder with DTSC, the Water Board, and the federal EPA, which one of the board members said that she is a former member of. I walked Area 4 of the Santa Susana Field Lab with the federal EPA and DTSC from 2010 to 2012 to look at the nuclear risks, the radionuclides and things. There's a lot of misinformation about the Santa Susana Field Lab. Claims that the worst nuclear disaster in the history of the United States occurred there are false based on studies I've read, and that we have cancer clusters in children in my community is false based on the documentation by Dr. Thomas Mack, the chair of the former chair of LA County Cancer Surveillance and the chair of the Prop 65 committee for the state of California. So I ask for all you please to investigate not only Santa Susana Field Lab, but to prioritize your meetings based on the communities that are most at risk, like Exide. And in San Francisco, I am aware that you have Treasure Island and other areas that are really, really bad. And so I'm really supporting all of you and just ask you and thank you for being there for us. Have a good day.
Thank you. We appreciate your comment. I have Cynthia Babich, if you would like to express your comment at this time, as well as state your name and affiliation for the record.
Thank you. My name is Cynthia Babich. I'm the director and founder of the Del Amo Action Committee, a grassroots environmental justice group in the unincorporated LA County area for over 30 years. I'm also the coordinator of the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network, who has been meeting for the last 15 years. I want to say that I'm optimistic hearing each of your introductions, but yet remain skeptical. As many know, and especially Lizette, who I really appreciate being on the board, as well as you all, we're in deep danger, and we really need DTSC to be strong and to protect our communities, and that's something we haven't seen in a very long time, if ever. So we are watching. We remain ready to help out in any way we can, but time is of the essence. We can't hang on much longer. So Godspeed in your work, and please make a difference, and just don't become another part of the problem. So as I said, we're here to help, but you know, many of us are getting older too, and we're trying to prop up the next generation, and without a clear path forward and guidance from inside the agency, we're not very hopeful that that will happen. So thank you. I'll be watching.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comment. And I have Juan Villa Romero. You can now express your comment, and please state your name and any affiliation for the record.
Hello, thank you so much. Juan Villa Romero, ECL Berkeley. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to emphasize the role of information. I think one shortcoming that we have had is that we haven't made the connection between environmental health and public health. For example, we have the biomonitoring program here at DCL Berkeley. I personally, even though I went to school, I have a PhD in biogeochemistry, I didn't know that contamination was something that occurred to our bodies. It's not only something that happens to the air, to the water. Our bodies accumulate pollutants, and there's an association between that accumulation and health. California is the 5th economy of the world. I bet that the economists can do the calculations and tell us what's the cost of that contamination of our bodies on our productivity and our competitivity. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and let's make that association clear. The environment is part of us. A clean environment, it's a healthy body and a productive society. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your comment. That is all the hands that I see at this time. I will now ask our Spanish interpreters if we have any from our Spanish call-in line. We have no comments from our Spanish call-in line. Thank you, Claudia. So that concludes this comment period. If you would still like to provide comment, again, you can email us at ptscpublicmeeting@ptsc.ca.gov. I will now turn it back to Chair Rizzo for continued agenda.
Thank you. And good afternoon, Chair Rizzo. Thank you to you and all the board members for serving on this board to strengthen DTSC's ability to meet its mission, to protect against past, present, and future harm from toxic substances. We are here to protect California's people, communities, and environment from toxic substances, to enhance the economic vitality by restoring contaminated land, and to compel manufacturers to make safer consumer products. We are ready to work with the board to build on the improvements that we have been making to the department over the last many years, and to implement the governance and fiscal reforms enacted by the legislature last year. The reforms called for in SB 158 complement DTSC's ongoing efforts to improve DTSC's transparency, accountability, and fiscal stability. I'd like to take some time today to talk about the state of the department and to provide an update on our progress implementing the reforms called for in SB 158. I'll start with our strategic plan. DTSC is well underway implementing a 5-year strategic plan, which will guide our work through the year 2024. I believe many of you are familiar with that plan, but I'd like to highlight a few elements. 3 of our goals in particular. One goal is to build strong partnership with all who are impacted by our work. That means communities, industry, environmental organizations, and local government. But partnership also extends to working with the legislature and now partnership with you. Our second goal is to promote environmental justice. By that, we want to prevent harm and protect the most vulnerable. We've improved our lines of communication with environmental justice communities, but community members have made it clear that there's much more to be done to achieve different outcomes on the ground. Your role is pivotal, and this board forum can inform how we move forward on this goal and how we measure our progress. Third goal that I want to mention is to provide high-performing programs and services. Your oversight will provide another opportunity to assess where our opportunities are to improve and to continue to be as efficient and effective as we can. DTSC has 3 core programs that revolve around the past, present, and future of toxic chemicals in the state. The Site Mitigation and Restoration Program remediates the toxic legacy of commerce in the state, from the gold rush to the aerospace industry to the semiconductor industry and beyond. This program works toward ambitious goals. I was pleased to hear Secretary Blumenfeld highlight how ambitious we are being, both for the number of cleanups we're overseeing, as well as the level of protectiveness for those cleanups. The Hazardous Waste Management Program governs how toxic substances that are generated in the state are transported, stored, and disposed of in the present day. The legislature invested in this program starting in 2015, and those investments are paying off. Over the 2 fiscal years, starting in 2012, we made only 5 permit decisions. This year, in contrast, we've already finalized 12 decisions, including permit modifications. And we've given public notice for an additional 5 decisions, and there's more to come. And equally important, if not more important, these permits are more rigorous and more enforceable than ever before. I'm proud to have helped stand up DTSC's 3rd program, California's groundbreaking Safer Consumer Products program, which is to drive manufacturers to look for safer alternatives to toxics in their products. This program is impacting product design to protect our natural resources, to protect children, and to protect vulnerable workers and all of Californians. And the impact is broad. There was mention of PFAS chemicals, and the work that program has done has really set the groundwork for others to take action. In addition to establishing the board, SB 158 included important provisions to improve how we work. For instance, it strengthened our financial assurance provisions to make sure that operating businesses can take responsibility for any contamination that gets released or needs to be cleaned up and addressed. It also has measures to strengthen our permitting timeline accountability. Notably, within the reform, DTSC received $500 million in one-time funding to implement what we call the Cleanup in Vulnerable Communities Initiative, or CVCI. We are making tremendous strides in implementing the first installment of the $500 million provided for in this CVCI initiative. It has several efforts. I can't go into all the details today, but I'll highlight a few. First, the grant guidelines for the Equitable Community Revitalization Grant Program, which is approximately $250 million. Those grant guidelines have been developed, and we're conducting outreach with local government agencies, including the legislature, tribal governments, environmental justice organizations, public and private entities totaling more than 1,000 people. And these grants will enable them to tackle contamination in their communities and put land back into productive use. Pre-applications were solicited and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. We received 88 pre-applications totaling $143 million in requests. Full grant applications are now being submitted through an online grant application system, and that grant application period closes on April 4th. Second, the Site Discovery and Investigation Program has screened more than 100 sites in vulnerable communities and is working to finalize contracts to begin investigations on how much remediation is needed and how to move forward with remediation. Thirdly, the $500 million provided additional funding so that we could work on 21 high priority orphan sites identified last year. And they were identified based on the potential for releases as well as the environmental justice considerations of where those sites were located. We can provide more detail on each of those sites if you would like in the future. Lastly, I'll mention some of the other aspects of the CVCI program. It includes technical assistance grants to help communities get the technical help they need to participate meaningfully in public process related to the work that we do. We are standing up workforce development programs around the state so that community members who are seeing remediation or have a number of cleanup sites in their area can actually benefit from the economic investment in the cleanups in those communities. We're also, some of that funding will also go for an environmental justice action advisory committee that obviously will be a strong point of interest for you. And we look forward to getting that committee up and running in partnership with you. The reform called for a modernized hazardous waste management plan. The generation and disposal of hazardous waste is an equity issue for communities where hazardous wastes are generated and facilities are situated and operate. The plan allows the state to re-envision how we tackle hazardous waste in California. It will be presented to you triennially. I'm happy to report that the plan has been fully staffed and the new staff is developing a work plan for compiling the data analysis report, which will guide the plan, the full plan. Initial data research is already underway to establish a baseline understanding of how hazardous waste is managed in the state. We anticipate hosting workshops this summer regarding specific subjects such as waste transportation. Ultimately, the plan will provide a roadmap for reducing personal, societal, and environmental impacts from hazardous waste. The required data report is on track to bring to you in 2023 with completion of the full plan in 2025. The fiscal stability objective of the reform was achieved by establishing a new fee structure that will generate an additional $59 million in revenue to support DTSC's work. The increased fees were based on the workload analysis that was referenced earlier, and it analyzed the workload within our 3 programs that I described. The analysis revealed that we lacked adequate resources to provide services to meet our mission. We identified a number of priority mandates and activities that were either underfunded or completely unfunded. The fee rates established in last year's budget provided for the first time sustainable revenue for the department and gave you the ability to ensure that funding is adequate in years to come. This year's budget, as proposed by the governor and now under consideration, will build on that foundation by filling critical gaps that were identified in that workload analysis. There are too many programmatic improvements associated with the reform and made possible by the individual or the additional funding to enumerate. But I'll just mention where we are on a couple of aspects or what we can expect moving forward. The site mitigation and remediation program is now able to start doing discovery and investigation of contaminated sites. There are estimates that there are greater than 150,000 contaminated sites around the state. And yet this department has not had the resources to investigate those sites, understand the extent of the contamination, and move forward with remediation. Look for responsible parties who should be held accountable to clean up those sites. The $500 million, the CVCI is jumpstarting our investigation program, and we expect to continue to sustain that into the future with your support. The hazardous waste management program benefited significantly from the reforms. I will say that because the permitting program had been invested in over the years, there were fewer resources for our permitting program. But there are other aspects within hazardous waste management program that need to be addressed. Our policy and program support branch, our enforcement branch, and our Office of Criminal Investigation. And we can now strengthen our enforcement to oversee safe and effective management of hazardous wastes. We are going to undertake more criminal investigation in vulnerable communities. We are going to increase the frequency of transporter inspections, which we know are frequently violate hazardous waste laws. And we can improve the quality of hazardous waste inspections by our local enforcement partners around the state in the Certified Unified program. Among other outcomes, we expect to double the number of transporter inspections, bring dozens of additional enforcement actions against transporters and generators who violate hazardous waste laws and regulations. Of course, the ultimate goal of these resources is to increase compliance rates and decrease violations, which in turn protects public health and the environment, particularly in vulnerable communities where many of these violations occur. For each of these initiatives, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that for the first time, our Safer Consumer Products program will be fully staffed. Because of that staffing, it will finally be able to meet the vision that was put forth when the green chemistry laws were enacted. The resources provided will nearly double the program in size and allow them to tackle more consumer products containing harmful chemicals, expand on the support for industries who are navigating that process, engage in new and different ways, and ultimately have a strong enforcement program element to that program so that we can make sure that it actually functions as intended. With each of those initiatives, DTSC will continue to build on our progress toward greater accountability and transparency. We are already expanding on the performance metrics that are tied to our strategic plan, and we're developing dashboards, some of them which are internal, so that we can be a numbers-driven, a data-driven organization, but many of which will be external and allow tracking of our progress on all of these initiatives. We look forward to your feedback and guidance on our metrics. We want these metrics to provide meaningful assessment of the impact of our work. Our staff will continue to help you get started on your important work. In your introductions, you conveyed your clear understanding of the impact of our work in very personal ways. Our staff is working hard with you because we really can't wait to tell you about what's going on in the department. We're eager for your deliberations and to hear what you think our opportunities are to get even better. Our executive leadership team and I are grateful, truly grateful for this opportunity to serve during this critical time, during this transition, during this moment when you begin the work of the Board of Environmental Safety. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Good afternoon. Hoping everybody can hear me. Okay, great. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and esteemed board members. It's such an honor to be here today to welcome you to the Board of Environmental Safety in this memorable inaugural event. We've been looking forward to this board's start, and I can say that it's just such a privilege to work with a group of women who are so experienced and talented and knowledgeable about the topics that pertain to DTSC's mission. I look forward to working with you in the future in my capacity as Chief Deputy Director for the Department of Toxic Substances Control. But today I'm going to provide you with an update on a few administrative items that the board's executive officer will in the future be responsible for reporting. First, and as you know, all the board member positions have been filled and the board members have been onboarded. You are all in various stages of completing the State of California Public Service mandated trainings. Some of those include our new employee orientation, training on defensive driver ethics, fire and safety, IT privacy and security, to name a few. All of you are somewhere in the process of completing that training. You've all been provided with state-issued IT equipment and phones for your use. Second, a website for the Board of Environmental Safety has been temporarily established on DTSC's website at www.dtsc.ca.gov/BES. We've been working with the California Department of Technology to establish a separate website from the DTSC website and anticipate the release date for that site to be in the next couple of weeks. When that site is established, the web address will transition to https://bes.dtsc.ca.gov. And that we'll make sure to put that link on DTSC's website so our public members and partners can easily access your website and your information. Third, I'd like to discuss the Board of Environmental Safety's budget. If we could put up the budget slide on the screen. Terrific. The board has been appropriated $3 million annually in total, of which it has expended approximately $200,000 for salaries and operating expenses for this fiscal year. The board's budget includes $2.4 million for personal services, and that includes salaries and benefits for board members and board staff, $566,000 for operating expenses and equipment, $525,000 for distributed administration, which are all the programs state agencies have to support operations, including services like human resources, budgeting and accounting services, contracting services, etc. The $3 million is funded from the state's general fund in the current fiscal year, and from a split between the Toxic Substances Control Account and the Hazardous Waste Control Account in fiscal year 22-23 and ongoing. The budget supports 15 positions, including 1 full-time chair and 4 part-time members, 1 executive officer, 1 attorney, 3 scientists and engineers, 6 analysts and managers, and 1 administrative assistant. So this is a good segue to our next topic, which is the hiring process to fill the board staff positions. And if we could put the organizational chart up on screen, thank you. Currently, we're in the process, as you indicated, Madam Chair, of filling the executive officer position, which, as you indicated, it's been advertised. Final file date for that advertisement was March 25th. The position was established as a career executive assignment position, or otherwise known as a CEA, which requires a civil service examination. DTSC has been delegated by the California Department of Human Resources the authority to conduct CEA examinations and will do so for this position. The board will be provided with a list of qualified candidates. It can then interview and use to make the final determination on whom to select for this crucial role. Additionally, 3 other positions are currently being advertised: an associate government program analyst to support the board's analytical and administrative functions, the ombudsperson responsible for serving as an objective liaison between the board and the public, and a senior hazardous substance engineer position responsible for providing technical support to the board, including providing technical guidance for permit appeals. Pending the adoption of the recommended operational guidelines you referenced in your opening comments, we will post the recruitment for an attorney to support the board's legal activities, including Bagley-Keene and the board's responsibilities with permit appeals. Although these positions have been advertised by DTSC's Office of Human Resources, all board staff positions will be hired by the board's executive officer once appointed. Finally, we anticipate the board's executive officer will work with the DTSC's Office of Human Resources to recruit for all and fill all the remaining positions that have yet to be advertised. My final report pertains to a permit appeal received this week. Earth Justice Clean Air Coalition of North Whittier and Avocado Heights filed an appeal to DTSC's February 23rd, 2022 approval of Quemetco's Class 2 permit modification request. Quemetco seeks to install and operate a compression auger and centrifuge at their facility in the City of Industry. DTSC will work with the board to submit the appeal to the board. It's my understanding that the board will be developing their process for permit appeal review and consideration. And that concludes my report to the board.
Thank you, Deputy Director Negri. As I said earlier, you've been an amazing resource for us, and we have a lot of work to do, as is outlined in terms of hiring. So you can see we are literally without our own independent staff. That said, the respectfulness and the that has been shown to us in terms of deference, we're asked how we want to handle something, what we want to do with it. I mean, it's been really professionally done. So I want to compliment you and the rest of the team. Now it's time for board discussion based on the, if any of the board members have any comments on what we've heard from Dr. Williams and Deputy Negri, please weigh in now so that we can memorialize your thinking. Take yourself off mute if you have comments you want to make and contributions to the discussion or questions for us to follow up on.
Thank you, Deputy Director Negri, for the information you provided. A follow-up comment really for the other board members to consider is as we think about permit appeals in the context of metrics and SLAs for our board, when we talk about strategic plan, I'd love for us to think about what our turnaround times might be to consider appeals that are in front of us as the board.
Was that, did you ask that as a question or you want that for the record? For the record, Sushma? Thank you. I'm not sure how many questions we could ask anyway, Greg. I'm asking the attorney. Okay.
You can direct questions to the staff for consideration at the next meeting. Sure.
Great, thank you. So I think what I'm hearing from your report, Deputy Negri, that there is a permit appeal that was submitted this week, that one of our agenda items for the next board meeting will be dealing with our process, and in the interim, understanding the process for dealing with permit appeals and bringing that forth at the next meeting to the extent that we can pull that together. And I'm sure we'll require technical assistance, and we'll need to figure out who's going to provide that to us in the absence of our own team. So I think everyone should anticipate that there'll be a follow-up to the discussion of the permit appeal that's been submitted by Earth Justice. And we will confirm our authority for that, which we do understand now becomes ours to address permit appeals. Is there any other comment or question about that from board members? Yes, Georgette?
I had a legal question regarding information about Cameco. How limited are we in communicating with the public regarding issues related to the permit appeal?
Once you well, I'm assuming you haven't seen the appeal, but once you see the appeal, right? So all you know right now is there is an appeal.
Correct.
That's been submitted, and no one has read that yet. So Greg, this seems like a perfect opportunity for you to advise us.
Well, I haven't participated in a permit appeal process. However, my understanding is that you're going to be hearing permit appeals. So you really should be limiting your knowledge of the appeal based on the record before you. And you shouldn't be going out for additional information.
Georgette, let's try again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so in relation to getting familiar with the appeal process that we haven't established, how do we go about it?
I think that's a really good question. And since we just got this appeal today, yesterday we began, and our orientation is done in buckets because only 2 of us at a time can participate. So a couple of us did have a 40-minute overview from the permit staff, but that's different than the permit appeal and the technical appeal piece. I see my job over the next week or two is to understand how that happens, who can provide us independent guidance, and then figuring out how we will get oriented to that, how we will learn about that, whether we do that at the board meeting writ large with all of us, or whether we have individual meetings where we get schooled on that. So it's absolutely the same question on my mind. How are we going to learn how to do this? And how are we going to secure independent analysts or permit people to guide us, to help us interpret the appeal, help us interpret the original permit, the permit that was approved. So we have a lot of work ahead of us on that, and literally it just came in. So I don't have more than that, but I don't know if Deputy Negri can add to that.
So maybe, can I just reframe my question again?
Sure.
So putting aside the current appeal that we have in front of us that none of us have seen, just in terms of process, it is my understanding that we don't have a process yet
Correct.
established. Okay. So would that be something, I'm assuming that as we establish that process, that would be something that we would take as an action item.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Oh, okay. So I'm assuming that's going to be something that we would work on for next meeting, so we can attend to this appeal process within our legal boundaries.
Correct. So we need a lot of advising, and then I'm sure that to the extent that we can get ready everything that we need at the next board meeting, I would think a significant chunk of time will be spent as the whole board can convene to understand the process, to outline a process, to vote on a process. So we have to approve the process that we're going to use and ensure that it meets the legal standards, our fiduciary responsibilities. So I think we have quite a task ahead of us at the next meeting, which we need anyway. It's part of our job. Part of our job is to hear permit appeals. Part of it is to look at fee structures. So we have a lot of schooling to do. So I think that's the perfect question.
Okay, and then just lastly, just in terms of, because I think establishing an appeal process is very critical, because I think it's such, but in terms of engagement, I'm just, I don't know if this is, I don't know if we have legal counsel here or to staff, but supportive staff. I just want to make sure, being that we already have an active case, we're not bound within a certain amount of period that we need to look into this case.
I can't answer. I don't know how long we have to respond to that. Now, historically, it would appear that one can take too much time to respond to a permit appeal. So, we want to be as prompt and efficient and thorough as we possibly can. But I don't know that. I don't know the current process because we haven't studied that yet. And we'll need the attorneys who will guide us on that. I'm sure there are other attorneys at DTSC who can help. Greg, is that correct? Help us understand what the existing process was. So I think if we start with that, then we'll understand generally what's anticipated on the part of the appellant as they request this appeal. So they are being represented at this point. We just don't. I can't answer that, but we do have to answer it. Can we move from that piece of it and see? Francesca, do you have anything to add to that, or Greg? To my very broad non-answer?
No, that's okay. I know that we're kind of trying to be responding to something that we haven't developed, right? So I'm sensitive to that, but I'm also sensitive to making sure that we're reviewing this appeal without having an appeal process. But, and I also want to make sure that as we're developing the appeal process, it feels like we have even a greater urgency, but I'm also very sensitive. I want to make sure that we are also having enough ample time to engage for input. So I want to make sure that we're moving in a responsible way, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we're establishing a process the best that it can, because this is really very critical. So, thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
Duly noted and agreed upon. Sushma, I think your hand was up next. No, you're taking it down?
No, I believe member Alexis's hand was up before mine, so I'll let her go first.
Okay, Alexis.
Yeah, we don't need to be so formal. A few things. One, we have, knowledge of one permit appeal, and I believe a couple of others that are likely to be on our desks in due course. And I imagine that later on in the agenda and at our next meeting, we will try and organize our future board venues to be in the communities of the relevant permit appeals, so that if we're going to hear, for example, Quemetco, and it's in the City of Industry, we will strive to have our board meeting there, but we will get to that on the agenda. A question really for Greg and his colleagues is, it seems like if we have knowledge of a forthcoming permit appeal or one that has been filed, not only will staff be putting together a package for us, but it seems that the state's ex parte requirements would apply, that we would not take it upon ourselves to have conversations outside the administrative process, but only within the administrative process and on the administrative record. So I know we want to start out being transparent and in conformance with requirements. And if Greg wants to add anything on that, that would be most welcome. I know that when we were sworn in, you or the DTSC team had sent us a number of attachments. And one of them I just want to call everyone's attention to was attachment 8, which was the codification of permit appeals. It's just a couple of pages, but it's worth going back and looking at attachment H so that we can begin to be prepared for our future discussion on our own permit appeal procedures. So with that, over to Sushma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Building on the point made both by Georgette and by Alexis, it seems that we are going to learn the process of reviewing permit applications through this one case that's in front of us. It would be great to have the meeting in the community and also have some live conversation and presentations, perhaps by the permit applicant and by DTSC or our own technical staff, so that we can fully understand the nuances of the application outside of reading the material and absorbing individually. So that was one ask, if that's possible. Second is up-leveling the conversation a bit to talk about the North Star metrics for ourselves. In the previous DTSC public meeting, I heard about the North Star metric being 90% of permit decisions within 2 years. Would love for us to hear more from DTSC staff. Perhaps Deputy Director Negri can come back and share with us where DTSC is in terms of this meeting this North Star metric.
Hey, Greg, do you want to comment on that? That was a form of a question to how open these discovery meetings can be. That's the way I took your question. And can they occur in an open forum? That's not how I understood it at the outset, that the assessment is, but Greg can possibly answer that or refer us.
I was having difficulty hearing the question. I would like to go back to Member Strauss-Hacker's question or statement, at least, regarding information in connection with permit appeals. Again, you're the body that's going to make an administrative adjudication regarding this matter, and therefore you really have to limit your information based on the record. And that means you shouldn't be having ex parte contact with any party for additional information. You really need to focus on the information that's being presented by both sides. Regarding, was it information not related to permit appeals? Was that your question? Or again, you were breaking up, so I didn't quite hear the question.
I'm happy to paraphrase, but
Thank you.
as we make a permit appeals decision, in the discovery session, can we have the applicant as well as either DTSC or our own technical staff elaborate on the materials at hand so that we're not relying exclusively on the package of materials and are able to go back and forth to understand the nuances?
I think that's a matter that will be fleshed out as part of your process. I suspect. Well, actually, I don't want to speculate. Again, this is something that'll be fleshed out, no doubt, as part of your process.
So let's record that as a question. I'm sure you won't forget it. But as we create our list of questions when we're being schooled on permanent appeals, let's be sure we get them all in. And in the meantime, what I'm hearing is we don't know anything. We haven't read the permit appeal. And I'll do some initial sleuthing with the legal folks and then figure out our next step and come out to all of you. Is that satisfactory to everyone? Okay. Any other comments from board or discussion points from the two reports that we received? We will now open it up for public comment and response. If anyone in the public wants to respond to our discussion, to Director Williams or Deputy Director Negri's comments. That's the open agenda right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we will now begin public comment regarding Director and Deputy Director's reports. So we invite you at this time to raise your hand from the Zoom toolbar or to press *9 to raise your hand if you are calling in on the English line. When you are called upon, you will press *6 to unmute. We will take comments from the Spanish line after the raised hands. If you have joined our Spanish line, again, please wait for instructions from the interpreter. You may also send any comments to us by email to dtsc@dtsc.ca.gov. Again, each commenter will be provided 2 minutes. So those joining by Zoom will see the timer on the screen, and those joining by phone, we will give you a 30 seconds remaining warning as well as when time expires. The time will be doubled for participants who join, who are commenting in Spanish. So I will begin with our raised hands, and I will recognize Christine Rowe. Please again, state your name and affiliation.
Christine Rowe. I am a resident of West Hills, California, a former member of the West Hills Neighborhood Council, and a technical stakeholder with DTSC, the federal EPA, the Water Board, and on projects like the Santa Susana Field Lab and other contaminated sites within the communities of West Hills, Canoga Park, and Woodland Hills. Specifically, Director Williams mentioned a list of 21 sites, and I would like to know if that list could be made available, a priority list, because I would like to see if, for example, any of these sites fall on that list. Second, I would like to just say that when they were speaking, I had my hand raised to ask that question at that time. It would have been good when she was available to ask that. The second thing is on the PFAS, for example, when we're looking at what we have products in our home that are these toxic chemicals, then the question becomes, how do we dispose of them? If they're, are they in frying pans? What products are they in? because we don't want these in our landfills because of course that potentially impacts our groundwater. So we have to be looking at the waste aspects, the landfill aspects, and that's a concern that has come to my attention when I've taken things to the hazardous waste location center, and there are some things that they won't take in LA County or LA City hazardous waste. For example, how do you dispose of a fire extinguisher or a smoke detector and things like that? These are things that need to be made aware to the public. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. I will now recognize Cynthia Babbage. If you would please again state your name and affiliation for the record.
Cynthia Babbage, Director and Founder of the Del Amo Action Committee, Coordinator for the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network. My comment is Meredith talked about having funding now for orphan site cleanup. And as a grassroots organization, we have stockpiled hazardous soil in our community because we do not want to ship it to another community and just simply shift the burden. So my concern is that when we talk about increasing the hazardous waste cleanup at current facilities, that we're really just talking about increasing and shifting the burden to communities that are already being impacted, like Buttonwillow, Kettleman City, and Westmoreland. I did participate on the DTSC hazardous waste reduction panel. There's a lot of work that we did. There's a lot of recommendations that haven't been followed up on. I personally believe that, DTSC needs to choose the location that is appropriate for additional hazardous waste sites in California, rather than just letting the operators decide where it's convenient for them to locate them. So I'm just worried that quite often the cart gets put before the horse, and while we all want to see our communities cleaned up, there should be more reliance and emphasis on new technologies that could actually really clean up the waste. They may be more expensive, but cleaning up the waste completely rather than just dumping it somewhere else is really the way to go. So if that work group or you guys would like to hear some input on the work that hazardous waste group did, I'm sure we'd be happy to share it, but we really never got a chance to pilot any of the technologies that might be, available to assist us in complete cleanups. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I will now recognize Chip Gribble. If you would like to make your comment, and please state your name and any affiliation for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. My name is Chip Gribble. I'm a retired DTSC employee. I heard, if I got this right, the appeals process, Greg said that the existing file should be the basis for an appeals and no additional information to be considered. If I've got that right, I'm not sure how you get a different outcome in an appeals process if you're limited to the same set of information that got you to there in the first place, which is being appealed. My second point is, it seems to me that the appeals process needs to be structured in a way that maximizes the appeals success rate. Otherwise, your credibility of this board is going to tank very quickly. And I wish you a lot of success. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Rubina Sewell, I am recognizing your opportunity to comment. If you would please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Yes, good afternoon, board chair and honorable board members. My name is Rubina Sewell. I'm the executive director of California Safe Schools. We're a children's environmental health and environmental justice coalition founded in 1998. Actually, today is our 24th anniversary. I just wanted to comment, and I'm sorry there were sound issues. I was not alone in that. I heard from other colleagues, and I would like to thank Director Williams because their office did try and correct that, in an expedited way. So thank you. So my comments today are really about communications, and communication and engagement is really a two-way street. And I hope, as do other colleagues of mine, that in the future, that the format that DTSC chooses when engaging with the public can please be a two-way street where participants can be seen, where chat is available, and there's more transparency about these kinds of discussions. So thank you so much. All the best to you. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Sorry, Rubina, I saw that your hand went up again. Did you have something else to add? Hearing nothing, I'll go. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so that is all the hands that we have raised at this time. I will now ask our Spanish interpreters if we have any from our Spanish call-in line.
No comment.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, before we move on to item 5, we are just about 2 hours. If you would like to call for a break at this time.
The meeting is reconvened at, I think it's 3:07. And I want to acknowledge that at this moment, there are 4 board members present, Alexis, Lizette, Sushma, and myself. And when Georgette returns, we will acknowledge that. So the next item on our agenda is agenda item 5. And that item calls for discussion of both the statutory governance responsibilities and the operational guidelines. Both of those documents are available to everyone who's on this call and will continue to be on our website. We are deferring the statutory governance documents to the May meeting. So we won't be addressing those here, but we are actively moving them to the May meeting. And I want to acknowledge the return of Georgette Gomez. So we are at full force right now. And the only item that we dealt with, Georgette, was to acknowledge that we're moving the statutory governance documents to the May meeting for deeper discussion. And we'll have legal counsel available to us when we do that, so that we can be sure that we fully understand all of our obligations under the laws. Also posted and available to everyone, and this is something we really all need to deal with as a board, is the draft language for operational guidelines for the board's consideration and adoption. They will be read in full. They include some items that are in the statutory governance document, meaning they were written into law, and then there are others that gleaned, and I took advantage of the wisdom of other boards and other staff in terms of operational guidelines that would be more, would be both appropriate and make our work more effective and more transparent and clear. That was the goal of the operational guidelines, to meet our statutory requirement, but to expand on that and to be able to inform the public very broadly of how it is that we are going to go about our business. That includes our code of conduct. It includes a number of items that, that we really need to be very clear and transparent about. So, Jessica has a throat lozenge and she will now read through that document. I really invite you. It's a really great opportunity for those of you who want to wonk out on it. It's really fun reading. You can read along. You can listen to Jessica. You can make notes. We will be asking for comments from the public. We will be having discussion amongst the board, and then we will be voting. So we're either voting to adopt them, we're voting to adopt and amend them, whatever it is that you have in mind. At the end of this discussion, we do need to take a vote. We need to not leave here without clarity on how it is we're going to operate going forward and what our principles and guiding documents are. And Greg is here, and Alexis and Greg have both paid attention to those items that are in the absolute statutory requirements, that even if somebody here thinks, oh, I don't like that idea, I don't want to do it, that won't be able to be removed if it's statutory or changed. So I just want to make that clear. So let us know what your thinking is, and we'll be advised if any of the items cannot be taken off the list. So at any rate, here we are. And I'm going to ask Jessica to begin reading. And just imagine that you have Audible on. Okay, this is your audio book. And now Jessica is going to be your audio book for a while.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will begin by reading the California Board of Environmental Safety additional draft language for recommended operational guidelines. We will read this section by section. As you see on your screen right now, the 15 sections. So I will start with section 1, role of the board. The California Board of Environmental Safety, which will from here out and throughout this document known as board, has responsibility for guiding and directing the operations and responsibilities of the board, and has responsibility for providing guidance to the Department of Toxic Substances Control. And from here on out throughout this document, the Department of Toxic Substances Control will be known as DTSC. In its role with DTSC, the board focuses on the results that DTSC intends to achieve, not day-to-day management of the organization. The board also has statutory responsibilities. Section 2, role of the board chairperson. Board chairperson shall: A, assure the orderly and fair conduct of board meetings. B, assure the decisions of the board are carried out by the executive officer and by contractors who report to the board. C, notwithstanding the language above, the executive officer determines the duties of staff that report to the executive officer. Section 3, strategic leadership. The board has the responsibility to determine what results it should achieve and communicate those in writing. Specifically, A, the board works in collaboration with the executive officer to develop the mission, goals, and measures of success of the board. B, based on the mission, goals, and measures of success, the executive officer develops a strategic plan for the board. C, the board approves the strategic plan. And D, the board regularly monitors the mission, goals, and measures of success and provides feedback as to whether it is successful in achieving milestones and the intended results. Section F, financial oversight. The board has the responsibility to assure the organization's financial resources are aligned with its goals. Specifically, A, the board works in collaboration with the executive officer in the preparation of board budget concepts annually. B, the board reviews and approves its annual budget within the confines of the California state budget process. Section 5, administration of responsibilities. The board has the responsibility to assure it delivers its responsibilities effectively and efficiently. Specifically, A, the board works in collaboration with the executive officer to hire staff to perform its responsibilities. B, the board regularly reviews the administration of its responsibilities and makes decisions how to improve as needed. Section 6, unity of control. The board as a body directs the executive officer and staff members. Members of the board may not attempt to exercise individual authority over the board organization except as explicitly set forth in the board's governance policies. Other decisions of the board acting as a body are binding on the executive officer, specifically in or out of board meetings. A, In cases where the board has provided direction on an issue through a vote, such decisions are binding on the executive officer. B, except where specifically authorized by the board, decisions or instructions of individual members of the board are not binding on the executive officer. C, in cases where the board has provided direction on an issue through consensus or other means, the chair is empowered to communicate the relevant direction to the executive officer. If the chair communicates the consensus outside a public meeting, the executive officer may request that such direction be confirmed through a formal vote of the board. D, in the case of individual members of the board requesting information or assistance, the executive officer may refuse such requests that require, in his or her opinion, an inordinate amount of staff time or funds or are disruptive. E, individual members of the board should communicate requests or suggestions for DTSC staff members or contractors via the executive officer. F, individual members of the board cannot give direction to persons who report directly or indirectly to the executive officer. G, the board as a body evaluates the executive officer. H, the board will refrain from evaluating either formally or informally any staff other than the executive officer. And I, individual members will refrain from evaluating any staff. Section 7, board member code of conduct. Board commits itself and its members to ethical, businesslike, and lawful conduct, including proper use of authority and appropriate decorum when acting as board members. A, members of the board shall conduct themselves with civility and respect at all times with one another, with staff, and with members of the public. B, members will be properly prepared for board deliberations. C, serving in a board capacity, members of the board shall demonstrate loyalty to the interests of the California Environmental Safety Board. Supersedes any conflicting loyalty, such as that to advocacy or interest groups or membership on other boards or staffs. It also supersedes the personal interest of any board member acting as a consumer of the organization's activities. D, board members must recognize the lack of authority vested in them as individuals, their interactions with the executive officer, with board staff, and with DTSC staff, except where explicitly authorized by the board. E, as required by law, members will respect the confidentiality appropriate to issues regarding personnel, proprietary matters, and attorney-client privileged communications. F, members of the board shall comply with all provisions regarding incompatible activities, namely they shall, G, shall not use the prestige or influence of the state or the appointing authority for his or her private gain or advantage or the private gain or advantage of another. H, shall not use their employment at the board for private gain or advantage. I, shall not solicit business from persons who own or partially own interest in a facility permitted by DTSC to manage, store, treat, dispose, or transport hazardous waste. J, shall not use state time, facilities, property, vehicles, equipment, or supplies for personal business, private gain, or advantage. K, shall devote their full time, attention, and efforts to their state office or employment during their hours of duty. L, shall not disclose confidential information available by virtue of state employment for private gain or advantage, provide confidential information to persons to whom issuance has not been authorized. M, shall not request or accept money or other considerations from anyone other than the state for the performance of his or her duties as a state employee. N, shall not receive or accept directly or indirectly any gift, including money or any service, gratuity, favor, entertainment, hospitality, loan, or any other thing of value from anyone who is doing or seeking to do business of any kind with the California Environmental Safety Board, or whose activities are regulated or controlled by the California Environmental Safety Board. Under circumstances from which it could reasonably be substantiated that the gift was intended to influence the officer or employee in his or her official duties, or was intended as a reward for the official action performed by the officer or employee. O, shall not perform any act in other than his or her capacity as a state officer or employee, knowing that the act may later be subject directly or indirectly to the control, inspection, review, audit, or enforcement by the officer or employee. Section 8, telework. Board members may telework in accordance with California EPA guidelines. Section 9, communications with media. Board chair and executive officer are delegated authority by the board to speak on behalf of the board to the media. Specifically, A, when board members, members of the staff, or contractors are asked by the media to comment on behalf of the board, they must funnel those requests to the board chair and executive officer. B, board members shall be notified as soon as possible of all media contacts and the content of all interviews. C, in their communications with the media about the organization, the board chair and executive officer must clarify the decisions made by the board. Must clearly state the decisions made by the board. Section 10, communications with stakeholders. Individual board members and the executive officer are delegated authority by the board to speak on behalf of the board to stakeholder groups and individual stakeholders. The term stakeholder groups is intended to include all groups and associations external to the organization, including the legislature and individual legislators. The term individual stakeholder is intended to include individuals who do not officially represent an outside group or association. Specifically, A, individual board members may speak on behalf of the board to stakeholder groups and individual stakeholders. B, when representing decisions of the board, individual board members must clearly state the decisions of the board. C, individual board members are free to provide their individual opinions to stakeholders. However, they must make it clear that they are speaking as individuals and not in their capacity as board members. And D, when board members are contacted by stakeholder groups, they must inform the board chair and executive officer. Section 11, general delegations to the executive officer. The board delegates certain responsibilities to its executive officer. The board may authorize the executive officer to enter into contracts on behalf of the board or conduct any business necessary for the efficient operation of the board. Specifically, A, the board communicates in writing its delegations to the executive officer. B, at any time, the board may decide to change its delegations to the executive officer. either by expanding or narrowing those delegations. When it does so, the board must communicate those changes in writing. C, though the board may change delegated authority for its executive officer, enter into contract, all contracts will be executed by DTSC under its statutory authority. And D, neither the executive officer nor any board member shall be financially interested in any contract made by them in their official capacity or by any body or board of which they are a member. Section 12, executive officers reports to the board. It is the responsibility of the executive officer to provide regular reports to the board on the following matters and frequency. A, strategic plan updates quarterly. B, financial updates quarterly. C, board statutory responsibilities implementation updates monthly. D, reports on statutory responsibilities risk factors quarterly. Reports regarding new contracts or changes in contracts monthly. F, reports from major contracts monthly. G, communications to media stakeholder groups monthly. And H, reports from auditor annually. Section 13, evaluating the executive officer. The executive officer's job performance shall be evaluated by comparing the organization's results, operations, and the executive officer's performance to the goals and policies established by the board. Specifically, A, board shall evaluate the executive officer's performance on an annual basis. B, the evaluation will be primarily based on an evaluation of the organization's performance against the goals established by the board, as well as based on the executive officer's performance as a leader. C, in advance of the evaluation, the executive officer shall propose performance criteria that represent his or her reasonable interpretation of achieving the results defined by the board. The board shall decide whether to use those as the basis for the evaluation. E, the board will use data to determine the degree to which the board will use data to determine the degree to which its expectations are being met. And E, the chair has the responsibility and authority to collect and assemble data needed to perform the evaluation of the executive officer. Section 14, delegations to the executive officer with respect to purchases and contracts. The executive officer is delegated the authority to initiate and decide on purchases and contracts up to $50,000 in value. In making purchases and contracting decisions, the executive officer shall use prudent judgment. The executive officer shall coordinate with DTSC's Office of Contracting Services, which will execute said purchases and contracts under its statutory authority. Under this delegation, the executive officer is authorized to A, work with DTSC's Office of Contracting Services to award and execute all contracts and written change orders or amendments thereto of $50,000 or less, where the concepts or allocations therefore have been approved by the board. Work with DTSC's Office of Contracting Services to award and execute all contracts and written change orders or amendments thereto of $50,000 or less, where such contracts and written change orders or amendments thereto are for the administration of the functions of the board as identified by the executive officer or are related to direct legislative mandates as identified by the board. C, all intra-agency agreements, agreements with other governmental entities, and written change orders or amendments thereto, where such intra-agency agreements and written change orders or amendments thereto are for the administration of the functions of the board as identified by the executive officer or are related to direct legislative mandates as identified by the board. D, prepare, conduct, and evaluate all solicitations, bids, requests for proposals for procurement of goods and services for review and execution by DTSC's Office of Contracting Services, where the concepts, allocations thereof have been approved by the board consistent with the approvals required above. E, work with DTSC's Office of Contracting Services to execute contracts and amendments thereto related to the board's programs, following procedures and guidelines that have been approved by the board. F, work with DTSC's contracting services to make other purchases related to the board's programs, such as for supplies, equipment, travel, training, and related services. G, confirm fulfillment of contracts for purposes of concluding the contract and making final payment, where the contract requires a report with policy recommendations. Staff will use these recommendations, among other things, in preparing an agenda item to be presented to the board for consideration. And H, the executive officer must notify the board about all contracts executed on behalf of the board. And finally, section 15, delegations to the executive officer with respect to the BES attorney. Board, according to allocations guidelines provided by the California Department of Human Resources, Attorney 3 and Attorney 4 positions must report to the constitutional officer. An exempt employee of the governor or a department's chief or assistant chief counsel or designees. The board will designate executive officer for purposes of supervising and managing the day-to-day work of the board's attorney. The board's attorney will provide legal guidance and support to the board upon request made through the executive officer.
Okay, I'm seeing smiles abound. So want to hear from the board if there are any particular questions, concerns, issues that that were raised for you in your pre-read or in this group read today. So here we are. We're here for discussion. If there is any concerns, any questions. This will hold us and guide us, and we'll be referring to it. I'm sure we'll designate maybe one person each board meeting to keep us on track with our guidelines. Okay, if the board doesn't, oh yeah, Alexis, I see your hand up. Sorry about that.
No, oh, well, Chair Rizzo, given our prior board discussion about permit appeals and the need to adopt procedures, I think the operational guidelines are sort of the narrow opening template for us, and they don't touch on some of our statutory responsibilities, right, such as hearing permit appeals, setting fees, and so forth. And so I expect that in the months to come, as we as a board develop and adopt permit procedures and go forward on fee structures and the like, we may have our own independent, set of procedures or guidelines that relate to that, especially given the board's authority to adopt policies and regs.
Absolutely. Point taken. Well taken. Anyone else? Greg, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
I do. I think section 14C is missing a word. I would propose the word would be approve all interagency agreements. So I think we're missing verb.
14C. Wait, where are we? Looking at the wrong one.
Greg's right. We need to start with a verb, and approve would be a good one.
Okay, good. Yay, okay, 14C. So will someone propose that? Well, when we get to the part where we vote on this, right? We'll have a motion and then we'll have an amendment. So Alexis, will you hold that amendment to provide it at the right time? Thank you, Greg. Anything else?
I can't raise my hand, but I just, we can go through this document and there are some areas where Board of Environmental Safety and Environmental Safety Board are like flip-flopped.
Right.
So that would just be an administrative thing that we should do before.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And so Alexis, will you add that to the amendments when we get to it so it's formalized?
Yes.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, so if that's it at this point, we will have, oh, there's Sushma.
Okay, finally, I'm unmuted. A question about section 10, point number D. When board members are contacted by stakeholder groups, they must inform the board chair and executive officer. The question is, do we only inform you or also provide context about what the issue was and what the discussion topics were?
My guess is that since it's both, not either or, that one of us may be very well aware of a further discussion that or have other information that would be useful as you make that connection. I think I've been contacted by and I'm going to talk with them. I don't think it should be overly onerous in any way. I see it more as an opportunity to fill you in on things that may have come our way or where there are issues that you may not be aware of that have come that just we haven't had a board meeting, right? So we don't meet and talk about everything except at whatever pace we decide ultimately we'll have board meetings. So there could be 6-8 weeks between board meetings and we'd want to be sure that we keep people totally up to speed. Does that feel right to you? Acceptable? Sort of?
Totally acceptable. My question is, it seems like a really light ask of us. And if you wanted more context of the conversation, perhaps that's a reasonable ask as well. To perhaps say that we must inform the board chair and executive officer of the context of the conversation.
Sure. I think the way it read, when you're contacted, so a group contacts you and wants you to come and talk with them, or they want to talk about the permit, or they want to talk about whatever, that's fine. You're free to have those talks. Contact the board chair and the executive officer. There may be things that we can provide you with or add perspective to, and we'll know where that energy is coming, where the interest levels are. I think what we're trying to do, especially as we launch this, I was talking to Joaquin both CARB and the Water Board, talking with their chair. They've been around for decades, right? I mean, decades, like 50 years. So they have a whole pattern of how they operate. We're trying to establish, and my guess is at the end of a year, we'll look at this and say, we have amendments we want to make to our guidelines, things we want to add or things that are not necessary. We're overly constrictive on the executive officer or not restrictive enough. So I think this is a starting point and that we all need to be vigilant to keep track of what works and what doesn't. And if it in any way suppresses our engagement, our community engagement, then we have to look at that. We can change a guideline at any board meeting. This isn't for life. This is for now. And what felt right to me about this particular approach was it's a good starting approach, because we haven't worked together before. We don't have the executive officer. That person's going to be new. I wanted to err more on the side of over communicating than under communicating. And that could be onerous at the end of 6 months. You could tell me it's crazy and everybody wants to change it. But it was really to keep the flow. That was the intent.
Answered my question. It was regarding whether, like how much can we change this document? Because yeah, I mean, as we move forward with this process, I feel like a lot of things are definitely gonna, come up. And so will we have an opportunity at each meeting to offer amendments or changes? Or will we have to kind of wait till the next meeting to do that?
Let me ask Greg if we can have a standing agenda. Can we have a standing agenda that gives us the opportunity to address something that's ongoing or we think might be ongoing? You've got the new business, old business, finance report, it's kind of standard. If we could review how our operational guidelines are performing, could that be something, or would we have to be very specific about it in advance? No.
No, you can have an agenda item that repeats, that says review and consider possible amendments to our operational guidelines. I think that's fine.
Okay. Does that satisfy that, Lizette and Sushma?
I think if we were going to change our guidelines in the same way that we have publicly noticed it today and are taking a vote today, that even if it were an agenda item to discuss, if we're going to make a change, we have to clearly be transparent about changing the guidelines. And so we could discuss it, for example, at a regularly scheduled meeting and then schedule the vote change for the following meeting.
That would be fine.
Okay, so I think we're going to have regular meetings. Okay. And there's nothing that requires us to have like a 10-hour meeting every month, so we can sort of, I've been involved with boards where there's the big board meeting and then there's the in-between board meetings, the operational meetings whose agendas are not as robust, but we can talk about that. Okay, anything else on this document? So we will open it for public comments and discussion, and then we'll come back and I'll ask for a motion to adopt and with the amendments that we talked about, the cleanups. Does that sound okay? We ready to do that? Okay. Jessica.
Madam Chair. We will now begin public comment regarding the operational guidelines. We invite you at this time to raise your hand from your Zoom toolbar or press *9 to raise your hand if you're calling in on our English line. Once you are called upon, you'll press *6 to unmute. And Christine Rowe, I have acknowledged you for your comment. If you would please again state your name and any affiliation for the record.
Yes, my name is Christine Rowe. In the city of Los Angeles, there is a system of neighborhood councils. There are 99 neighborhood councils. I am a former member of the West Hills Neighborhood Council, where I served until 2012, and I'm still affiliated with a number of neighborhood council systems and the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils. And I was the public health chair and the environmental health chair when I left the neighborhood council. So I have taken state ethics training in that capacity. So in my opinion, any discussion of the board members with the public would be considered ex parte communications and would be a violation, in my opinion, of what your mandate would be. I recently have been attending some water board meetings, for example, and I know a number of the water board current and former members. I reached out to one of the members on a topic, and I clarified. I said, I'm not allowed to talk to you, am I? Because of this would be ex parte. And that person said, yes, I cannot talk to you. it's ex parte. Number two, I would recommend that you have at least monthly meetings. When you look at the level of responsibilities, for example, 21 contaminated major sites, and if you went to these communities just by the end of the year, you'd only get to 9 sites within this year and or less. And so already you have failed by not being able to travel to these communities that are so greatly in need of your skills and oversight. So I ask that you meet at least monthly and travel to these sites based on that list of how DTSC has ranked these sites as the most hazardous and the most concerned to the communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Ingrid Ostrom, I have, you now have the floor. Would you please state your name and any affiliation for the record?
Ingrid Brostrom with the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. I just had a couple of notes about the document. First, there isn't much language or any language that mirrors the statutory language regarding the board's obligation to the public interest. There are many provisions in the statute that really underscore how important the board is in terms of maintaining its duty to the public. And so, I think you should consider adding in some of that statutory language also into these guidelines. Secondly, for the financial obligations, to my memory, it seems under-inclusive and that there are additional financial obligations and duties that the board has. And so I would just, caution to take a second look at the statute there. Third, the executive officer duties seem quite significant. This board was created really to address the transparency and accountability needs. And so I just caution the board to act very deliberate and carefully when delegating those duties to an executive officer. So I wish that I'd have a little bit more time to review those duties again, but also making sure that any duties delegated, really are ministerial in nature. For the language around the duty to alert the board chair in terms of stakeholder contact, I think adding language, making sure that it's stakeholders contacting the board members in the board members' official capacity. And then finally, I would ask that you consider holding off on voting on this document until there's more opportunity for additional public comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Those are all of the comments that I see from raised hands. I will now ask our Spanish interpreters if there are any from our Spanish call-in line. Thank you. That concludes this comment period. And again, if you would still like to provide comment, you can email us at dtscpublicmeeting@dtsc.ca.gov. And I will turn it back to Chair Rizzo. Madam Chair.
Sorry, we'll be going back to the board members for discussion. And just to acknowledge that we literally ran out of bandwidth in this less than 1 month and intend to present the governance statutory requirements summary document at the next board meeting. So I can understand the disconnect between some of the items that were statutorily required to perform and those we have not reviewed together. What's pulled out for the operational guidelines is really to get us started with the executive officer position and agreeing on basically a code of conduct and some key items. I understand that it's not fulsome enough. It doesn't have both documents reviewed at the same time. So how does the board want to proceed with that in mind? Georgette, your hand was up, and Greg looks like his mic go up.
Yeah, so after hearing public comment, and maybe this is just a procedural, and I do have some comments in this conversation. I always appreciate hearing from the public first before engaging as a board member, just because it also feeds my thinking. So maybe in future, as we're taking up action items, we can change the process. That would be just a friendly request. And then one thing that it dawned on me is as we were calling Spanish speakers, we don't have this information available in other languages, right? Or our agenda is just in English, or am I?
No, everything.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, it's in Spanish. It's translated.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
all the documents that we were able to get together in a timely enough manner to post and translate.
Okay.
And that's part of what limited the agenda, but yes, they're translated into Spanish.
Okay. I appreciate that. I didn't look at that piece, so I was just thinking about it as we were calling for Spanish speakers, if the information was available in Spanish, just so there can be engagement. And then, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Georgette. Others? Greg, any comments? Now, this is the point of the meeting where I'm going to acknowledge where I would have loved a Q&A session, and I can't wait till we have an in-person meeting where there can be more interaction. But that said, we're here now. We're looking at the operational guidelines where there were a couple of minor suggestions, and I don't know if board members want to make a motion, suggest amendments, a motion to adopt with changes, or how do you want to proceed?
May I hazard a suggestion, and with the understanding that we'll use it to sort of bat the ideas back and forth based on the comments we received. Ms. Rowe had suggested that we convene at least monthly, and there's nothing to keep us from meeting more frequently. We have yet to set a schedule, which comes later in the agenda today. But when we look at the statutory requirements are that we hold at least 6, of which at least 3 will be outside Sacramento. So I think that we will come to that on our agenda and continue to refine that. Ms. Bostrom's comment about how we could bolster this with more about our statutory obligations to the public. In our governance document that we're going to take up at the May 19th meeting in Sacramento, it references at the very beginning a particular focus that we have as a board on the disproportionately burdened and vulnerable communities, and then gets into our roles. And that may address Ms. Bostrom's comment without making this a complete duplication of the governance document. There are certainly other financial obligations, and we could add a sentence in the appropriate place in this document, which says that all applicable state financial and conflict of interest requirements apply nonetheless, and Greg could guide us in that. And then what I haven't done is address ex parte communication, and we could do so in 10D, taking up both Sushma's suggestion and Ms. Rowe's suggestion, and Ms. Bostrom's suggestion, where 10D would be when board members are contacted by stakeholder groups, adding in the board members' official capacity comment, they must inform the board chair and executive officer, and then add the words of the context of the communication. So that takes in both Sushma's comment and the public comment. So I would then in 14 propose, as Greg had suggested, that we add the verb in 10D, in 14D, 14C, we add the verb approve at the beginning. And we take up the editing suggestion from Jessica that any references to the Board of Environmental Safety be consistently worded throughout the document.
So it seems that we either construct that into proposed amendments after we take a motion to adopt, or we hold this over to the next meeting and we get a motion to hold over. Hands are up. I see Georgette, Lizette, Sushma. Somebody go. Lizette. Oh, go ahead, Georgette.
No, I think others, might just very quickly, I would be okay holding it off for next meeting.
Okay. Lizette?
I would be okay proceeding, and I was wondering if Board Member Strauss was making a proposal to vote on with all these noted amendments.
That's what I heard from Alexis, that we would then turn those into that commentary into specific amendments. That's what I heard from her.
So is this a motion then, or are we?
Well, I think we want to hear from, right. Sushma?
I thought I heard a motion to proceed as well. I'm in support of proceeding, assuming that the amendments that Alexis laid out so nicely for us are able to be taken into consideration. Especially given Lizette's point earlier about how this perhaps can be a standing item on the agenda where we revisit our operating guidelines. It seems like we're in a good place to proceed now and then revisit regularly.
Okay, I just want one point, item 15 on the, which I failed to mention. Item 15, which is the delegation of the executive officer with respect to the Board of Environmental Safety attorney. We need that delegation approved in order to go out and hire the attorney. So that piece, if we held over, would prevent us from going forward until we all agree on that delegation. So I'm just not trying to push it through, just trying to understand the pros and cons, what we gain and lose. We could have the amendments with the idea that we can always revisit because this is not statutory, it's adopted guidelines that we can always change. But item 15 is a critical one for us to move forward. And we actually, my thinking had been, and I hear that it's not complete enough at this point since we didn't do governance, is that we have something to operate with, something for the executive officer to move forward with that's acceptable. So Greg, you had a...
Yes, we could do both. I mean, there could be, the board could adopt the delegation to the executive officer right now for the purposes of going forward with the hire, and then consider approving the guidelines subject to the amendments that have been proposed in the subsequent meeting. And at least that way, we still have the delegation, you can go forward with the executive officer hire, and then it would give the board an opportunity to, reconsider or at least consider the amendments in a subsequent meeting.
Thank you. So does somebody want to move whichever way they want to move and make a proposal, put something on the table for us to consider? Okay, Alexis?
I was just waiting for it to unmute. Let me give this a try in order of the document. I move for the board's consideration that we amend the draft language in the following ways. First, that we align all references to the Board of Environmental Safety consistently throughout the document. Secondly, under item 7, board member code of conduct, that we amend letter M, as in mom, which states that we shall not request or accept money or other consideration from anyone other than the state for the performance of his or her duties as a state employee, that we state that financial responsibilities, there are applicable state of California financial responsibilities which attend each board member. I'm trying to get at some of the statutory requirements without citing them. Next, we go to item 10, and we amend D as in dog as follows. It currently reads, when board members are contacted by stakeholder groups, we add the words in the board member's official capacity, comma, they must inform the board chair and executive officer of the context of the communication, period. And then we add a full sentence. State of California ex parte requirements apply to all board members' communications. Lastly, we go to item 14, letter C, like Charlie, and we add the verb approve at the beginning of the item. And that is the basis of my motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Somebody say yes loudly.
Yes.
Okay, so Sushma second. Is there further discussion or any need for clarity or any comment from our attorney? Lizette?
The financial assurances part, I thought it would go under item 4, the financial oversight.
I would have liked to put it there, but that has more to do with our budget. And so it's our oversight of the board's financial resources rather than our conflict of interest requirements as individual board members. So that's why I was, look, I'm not beholden to any one place, but that seemed to be more of a finance and budget item. But I'm open to moving it because we're adopting guidelines as a whole at some point.
I can see that.
Thank you. Greg, do you have any comment on that?
Not on that issue. I do have a question regarding the ex parte requirements.
I think I did a clumsy job there, and I would love to have it turn out better.
Yeah.
We could also leave a placeholder and note that we want to amend this and that at the May or meeting thereafter, we may want to amend these
to address ex parte communication.
And that gives you and other legal colleagues the opportunity to craft more appropriate and precise language.
Yes, that would be preferable.
Okay, so let's pull that out of this motion with the amendments. We'll have a separate directive for the next meeting. So we won't include it in this motion. This would be the move to amend the document as Alexis just stated. And I think we need to have the motion read back by Jessica, if that's possible. If you have it clearly enough, or I could ask Alexis to do that again. I see. I'm going to ask Alexis. Then we'll, before we take a vote. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, but now we have a re-amended motion.
All right.
If I've got my Robert's rules in my pocket, I think that's what we're doing. Okay. Alexis?
Yes, and I would appreciate any corrections. First, I propose that we amend these draft guidelines in the following ways. First, that all references to the Board of Environmental Safety be consistently worded throughout the document. So glad I printed these out. Secondly, under item 7, M as in mom, we're going to add a sentence that says, State of California financial responsibility and conflict of interest requirements apply to all board members.
Okay.
Under item 10, D, as in dog, we're going to have when board members are contacted by stakeholder groups, we add the following words, in the board member's official capacity, comma, They must inform the board chair and executive officer. And then we add the following words of the context of the communication. We are not going to add in any clumsy ex parte language at this time, but we will return to do so. And then lastly, under item 14, C as in Charlie, the item will start with the verb approve.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and an amendment to that motion, a reclarification. Jessica, will you call for the vote?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Rizzo,
Yay.
Member Shushma? Or
Yay.
You say it out loud.
Thank
we're
you.
recording.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It takes 5 seconds to unmute. Yes.
Thank you. Member Georgette?
Yay.
Thank you. And Member Lizette?
Yes.
Sorry, and I apologize. Member Alexis?
Aye.
Thank you all. We have 5 ayes, no ayes, and no abstentions. The motion passes.
Okay, well, that was a little bit of a marathon, but it revealed more work that we have to do, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you for that. And when we get to the next meeting and we readdress any issues that we think are important and also go over the statutory requirements, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. Okay, now, if you remember, item 6 was morphed into item 4, so we can move right on to item 7, agenda item, which is initial priorities and activities lead. And what that is in the short months since we've been onboarded and given the, oh, I'm sorry, Greg, you wanted to comment.
Yeah, did we want to make the delegation in 15 for the purposes of hiring the executive officer?
We just voted on the whole thing with amendment. We just voted on the document with amendments, and that includes 15.
Okay, well, I believe we voted to
amend and adopt,
and then reconsider at the next meeting.
Okay, if there's any lack of clarity, let me just see if I can restate. Alexis, are you moving the adoption of these with those amendments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, did everyone understand that was the vote? Yes? Okay, thumbs up. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate you. Okay, now we are at board members' initial priorities and activities lead. And so since we've only been around for some of us even less than a month, and individuals have indicated their particular interest, ideas of things that they would like to take the lead on or want to consider. That doesn't mean they're the only one working on it. It does mean that between board meetings, they could work with one other board member, they could work with the executive officer, but that these areas are ones that we want to develop as a board in the early phase of our work. And so each member will have 1 to 2 minutes to talk about the role that they identified in one-to-one conversation with me for the purpose of informing each other and the public of what you have in mind. I'd like to start with everybody take yourself off mute so that the 5 seconds can go by. And Sushma, do you want to talk about collaborating on outcome metrics and working on strategic planning?
Yes, Madam Chair, happy to. I'll start with a caveat that most of us are 4 weeks in or less. So over the coming weeks, we expect to refine our approach together with the stakeholders in this call and together with our DTSC colleagues. But what we'll share today is more of our preliminary initial thinking and maybe some guiding principles. Based on what we've heard so far, I can share some guiding principles for the purpose of strategic planning and performance tracking. There are really 3 principles I'll talk about. One is measurable, responsive, and future-proof. So from a measurement perspective, from listening to all of the community members' input from past meetings, it appears that there's more we can do here, specifically in two areas. One is increasing the transparency on North Star metrics, and it's also come up a few times in this meeting today. So when we talk about DTSC's North Star metrics, what are they? I know DTSC is already doing a lot of work to build dashboards to make this information public, but perhaps there's more we can do here to ensure that not just the metrics, but we focus on delivering the outcomes and communicating the outcomes of the work that's already underway. So for example, there's enforcement activities happening. How are those being measured? What quality of approvals, permit approvals, that's come up in the past conversations. So this is an area we expect to lean in. As a second guiding principle, being responsive. This is another theme that at least I've heard come up in past meetings. I've heard Director Williams talk about setting a performance-based culture. So the goal here is to track not just what we're doing, but how quickly are we moving towards this North Star metric. So to that end, perhaps there's service level agreements or SLAs we can set for ourselves, things that we can commit to make sure the stakeholders and community members start to see progress more quickly. So that's the second kind of guiding principle, is measurable, responsive. And the third thing is future-proof. I think we've all heard in this conversation, the comment about making sure we're keeping up with new technologies, new testing methods. So we obviously want to make sure we are looking at the latest science and together with DTSC, considering those. I've heard a comment in the past about considering future sea level impacts and making decisions related to permits or enforcement. And in order to really bring this to life, I think we have to also be load balancing across the initiatives that focus on past cleanup together with the future we would like to bring to life. How can we more quickly turn the ship towards safer communities in California, reducing new chemicals from being introduced in consumer products and so on. So those are the three broad guiding principles. Again, this is initial thinking from being 4 weeks in. There's a lot that I'm learning. There's a lot that all of us are learning. So if you have any inputs to provide on this topic, please let us know. But just this is our initial thinking, or my initial thinking on where I would like us to focus.
And thank you, Sushma. And I'm sure we're going to have some monster proposal from you that we're going to wind up posting 10 days before the next board meeting, so that we could have a public discussion, or at least for part of that. Thank you for that. Georgette, we had a very preliminary discussion, and your expertise, we talked about being a liaison to the Office of Environmental Equity and whatever Environmental Justice Advisory Committee. I'm still unclear where the jurisdiction for that lives, but I know that we would intersect with it. And I wanted to welcome you to talk about those areas or anything else that you're interested in.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for reaching out and really starting to plant some seeds. And definitely would love to carry the development of the approach on how we're going to be establishing the engagement with our environmental justice and creating the environmental justice advisory group that will feed into the work that we'll do. I want to be cautious at this moment in terms of kind of guiding it, just because, you know, one of the major principles of environmental justice is really rooted in community and have that guide our approach. So the way that I want to proceed, and welcome another colleague to help me if interested, is to, you know, reach out to as many environmental justice organizations, and we can maybe get some input from colleagues that I welcome it, and come back in the near future to create a proposal on how we want to move forward, and obviously work with staff as well, because we want to make sure that we're implementing what we're supposed to, and then grow it from there to ensure that there's real buy-in from the community, because I think it's going to set a strong tone. So that's how I'm thinking about it. And yeah, so thank you so much.
That's great. And I think the Office of Environmental Equity is going to welcome and embrace this engagement. So we'll make those connections for you, and that'll be something that is a follow-up action item for us. Thank you. Lizette, we talked about hazardous waste plans and permitting and of course, not losing sight of your very strong and profound in your opening statement, EJ lens, that I'm sure is Georgette's invitational for collaboration with another board member. I think she's looking up on the screen, and I think I can see the smiles. But do you want to, because based on your experience and the fact that we do over the next couple of years need to contribute to a hazardous waste plan for the state, and because we have some pressing issues around permit appeals, talk to us a little bit about your approach to that and why you wanted to be the lead on those items, besides that I asked you. No.
Well, I think everything overlaps, and it's so important to really, work within the EJ communities, have their input in a lot of these processes. I know that there's already been a lot of work done by DTSC staff to expedite the permitting process in a way that doesn't overlook the community health aspect. And so that's one of my main interests, coming from a negatively environmentally impacted community, and seeing how a lot of the contamination stemmed from companies that had problems with their permitting process. This really, my interest in this really grew out of that, because I feel like as somebody who's been on the other side of the impact or lack of regulatory oversight, I can bring that sort of connection to the community. And so my approach would be to really delve into the process, to what we have so far as what's been looked into. I know Cynthia mentioned the hazardous waste reduction panel, and so really looking into what was suggested into that. If there's any other information out there, I would really appreciate it. We've met with some of the permitting staff. I did also look into some of the previous DTSC quarterly meetings where some updates were given regarding permitting. So it's all been really, as been mentioned, that this is kind of our learning period. So I welcome any other directional input from anybody here or in the audience.
Thank you, Lizette. And Alexis Strauss-Hacker, there's two parts to her conversation. One, thank you for being the backup here today and being so attentive to the agenda and all the documents. And we'll be hearing from Alexis at the end with action item summary so that we're all clear on that. There is a role that needs to be voted on. The three that we've just heard are voluntary and desired, and we will pursue them, but we're statutorily required to vote on a liaison for the Department of Defense. And I'm nominating Alexis for that role. And I will say it's based on her federal experience with EPA and federal agencies and her interest in that. So I'd like Alexis to elaborate on that and anything else you want to talk about before we go into public comment and a vote.
Thank you, Chair Rizzo. When I worked at EPA in the 1980s, working in hazardous waste and Superfund, I had worked on establishing administrative agreements for site investigation and cleanup with the different facilities across the Southwest primarily California, Arizona, Nevada, Hawaii, and then the Pacific Island territories. And in later years, I became involved in the formality of disputes. And sometimes I failed quite miserably to resolve those disputes, but I remain very interested because there's some unique authorities and unique situations that attend us with our California facilities that are federal facilities. And so I would like to give greater emphasis to not only being a point of contact as needed for those who operate federal facilities, but ideally being able to spot and resolve issues informally before they become a dispute. I might also be able to be helpful to the Cal EPA liaison to the Department of Defense, Carolyn Godkin, who does this admirably and convenes a number of regular meetings with all of the DoD branches. So to me, it's a unique niche for our role with DTSC, and I look forward to trying to make a difference in early resolution of issues, and perhaps with DTSC and DoD developing some handy one-page guides for communities and staff that explain what is different about a federal facility so that we don't get stuck arguing about certain authorities.
Great.
Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You notice I'm not on that list. I think I'm going to eat bonbons for the next month. But I want to focus on all the connections that need to be made to pass them on to all of you, and the hiring of the executive officer, the key positions that we need to put in place, and sleuthing around with all the other departments and bringing more information to you and learning more from Greg about what I can do and what I can't. So Sushma, you had your hand up. Did you want to comment? 5 seconds, yes, okay.
My comment is that way to go, Madam Chair, putting us all to work within 4 weeks.
Okay, delegation. I was waiting to get to the part of the meeting where I could do that. But at any rate, we're now at the place where we want to hear public comments. In particular, we'll be taking a vote on the nomination of Alexis Hacker to be our liaison to the Department of Defense. But as always, if public has any comments on these lead roles that we've just spoken about, or want to assert themselves to one of the leads and say, hey, I'd like to be in touch, we certainly welcome that as well. So Jessica?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we invite you at this time to raise your hand from the Zoom toolbar, or press *9 to raise your hand if you are calling in on the English line. When you are called upon, you can press *6 to unmute. We will take comments from the Spanish line after the raised hands, and if you have joined our Spanish line, please wait for instructions from our interpreters. You again can send your comments to us by email at dtscpublicmeeting@dtsc.ca.gov. Each commenter will be provided 2 minutes. Those joining by Zoom will see the timer on their screen, and those joining by phone, we will let you know that there are 30 seconds remaining and when the time expires. Time allotted will be doubled for participants who would like to provide their comment in Spanish. Ingrid Bromstone, I have enabled your permission for the comment period, and would you please state your name and any affiliation for the record?
Yeah, Ingrid Brostrom, Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. Comment is around this very important board duty to establish and adopt performance metrics and benchmarks. So my comment is that, while the board and board members, have a critical role to play in developing those, this is an item that public input is especially critical to rebuild trust. These are developing the benchmarks upon which we're going to determine whether DTSC is meeting its objectives. And what those objectives are, depends on who you talk to. And so having the public be very engaged in setting those is vitally important. And I just wanted to note that, in my view, the EJ advisory body is going to be critical to that job. And so my concern is that the 2 board members that are taking lead on the performance metrics in the EJ advisory body are different. And so I would just caution you all to figure out a way to integrate the EJ advisory body into the performance metrics conversations, and not as an afterthought, but very much, right from the beginning. And I know we don't have an EJ advisory body yet, but I just want to make sure that it's not an afterthought and we don't get too far down the line before we start engaging EJ folks on those really important conversations. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Idalmas Vaccaro, I have enabled your permissions. You now have the floor, and if you would please state your name and any association for the record.
Hi, my name is Idalmis Vaquero, and I am I'm with CBE, Communities for a Better Environment. CBE is a member of the California Environmental Justice Alliance, CEJA for short, and we are a coalition of environmental justice organizations throughout the state. Have been for years advocating for structural reform, transparency, and accountability at DTSC. And in line with the board's environmental justice commitments and what we just heard Board Member Gomez speak about when it comes to the EJ principles, CBE and our CEJA partners would like to invite the board members and executive team to participate in a statewide toxic tour to visit and hear directly from residents most impacted by some of the most contaminated sites in our state. And of course, this would be in collaboration with environmental justice communities and organizations. And some of our CEJA partners previously organized a tour for prior DTSC executive team members a couple of years ago. And we hope that this could serve, as a stepping stone to really meet communities in our streets and really learn from us. So we would, of course, be happy to coordinate with your team if this is of interest, and would love to start this communication and collaboration, especially with Board Member Gomez and any other board members who are, interested in environmental justice.
Thank you so much for your comment. Cynthia Babich, you now have the floor. If you would please state your name and affiliation again for the record, please.
Cynthia Babich, founder and director of the Del Amo Action Committee, coordinator for the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network. Please listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you here. There are environmental justice advocates, there are environmental justice networks, and then are those who are living in environmental justice impacted communities. And over the last several years, I've witnessed the displacement of the voice of the individuals living in these communities by large networks. This is wrong. We should be creating this space and uplifting those community members to speak for themselves. So as you move forward and establish this environmental justice arm of your board, please be mindful when you're reaching out to EJ groups to take the time and compassion and help them find their voice. And don't just easily replace our voices with people who are more articulate than the average community person might be, or more trustful than the average community person might be. It is upon you to show them that you're listening, that you care, and that their engagement will be meaningful. I'm 62 years old. I've been doing this 30 years, and it disgusts me to my core to watch previous colleagues stepping on the backs of environmental justice community members. This must stop, and this is the hope of this type of a board. So please listen to the voices of the community and not those who wish to take their place. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. This concludes this public comment period. If you would like to still provide comments, you can email us at dtscpublicmeeting@dtsc.ca.gov. And I will now turn it back to Chair Rizzo. Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I would just like to affirm for our callers and just to restate, one, that we are all concerned and accepted the mandate and the challenge to be involved in this board so that we could hold environmental justice and elevate it in the greatest and strongest way. So hold us all accountable. We are all committed to that. There may be leads that are better suited to navigate, but we are all there. And I feel like every single one of us holds that dear. We heard it in everybody's opening comments, and we're going to hold each other to that, and you hold us to it. So I just want to make that comment before asking for a motion to appoint Alexis Hacker to be liaison to the Department of Defense. Does anybody so move? Off mute, please. Go off mute. Mute, mute, unmute.
This is Lisette Ruiz. I move to appoint Alexis Strauss-Hacker to be our liaison to the Department of Defense.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I can second.
Sushma. Jessica, will you call the vote?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeannie Rizzo,
Aye.
Sushma Bhatia,
Aye.
Georgette Gomez,
Aye.
Alexis Strauss-Hacker, Lizette Gomez, or sorry, Lizette Ruiz.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes, no nays, and no abstentions. The motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Okay. All right, here we are. Agenda item 8, which is basically a litany of issues that the board, in stating their interests, concerns, things they wanted to take up in the next quarter, whether that's too ambitious or aspirational, I'm not sure. But between April, May, June, and beyond, these are priorities that the board has suggested commencing work on. Some of them we've already discussed. Some of them are in addition to that. Some are ones that are incorporated in the governance document, which we'll be talking about at the next meeting. So I'd like to just go through them and then invite any board discussion to add or change them as priorities, and then also invite public discussion on these priorities. So we obviously have to hire an executive officer and 12 staff. We heard already that there will be support for us to develop an independent website and communication channels. We'll determine locations for community meetings, whether that's board meetings held in community, tours that we take. That'll be something that is a priority for us. Develop a plan for the full office of the ombudsperson. You heard that the ombudsperson's position has been posted. They have 2 staff. That person has 2 staff to work with them to receive complaints. So we really want to develop the criteria, the accountability, the methodology for how that's going to work and how we will get reports back from the the office. I guess it's called the OO, the Office of the Ombudsperson. We want to consider youth outreach as, I know they're laughing at me. You can't see them, but they're all laughing at me. We want to consider a tour of sites. We talked about that, community concerns. And we want, one of the issues that has come up over and over again as I've listened over the years is, how do all the departments under Cal EPA intersect? What are their spheres of influence? Where is their overlap? Where's their duplication? Where's their opportunity? So that's a bigger question and bigger issue, but it means that we all need to connect with other boards, with other departments, understand it better so that we can be more effective, that we can lean in for them and they can lean in for us. I've already spoken with with CARB and the water board chairs who are very interested in this. And so I think further developing that will be an important one. Setting our goals for 22 and 23, strategic planning, and then an ongoing assessment of the fee structure, and also obviously permitting. So are there any comments from board members about that litany, that list of priorities, something that you think ought not be there or should be added to it. And then we can also hear from, we can get public comment. And if you prefer, we can get public comment first. I'm responding to Georgette. So if you don't mind a change in the agenda, Greg, don't tell me I can't do it. Can we have public comment on the priorities, please, Jessica?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we can. To all of our public attendees, we now invite you at this time to raise your hand from the Zoom toolbar or press *9 to raise your hand if you are calling in. When you are calling, we'll press *6 to unmute. Seeing none, I will move to our Spanish call-in line. To our interpreters, are there any folks from our Spanish call-in line who have questions or comments? Thank you. That concludes our comment period at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So either that went over really well and we accomplished reflecting back what we've been hearing over the course of this meeting. I want to receive it that way, but I also want to hear from all of you. Is there something we missed, something you heard today, something that you think we just can't get to or that you think we should add to this list? So that we have an ongoing agenda of work.
Member,
yeah. Lizette?
I had a clarifying question. I see the floor of sites of community concern. Does this kind of overlap with future VES meetings, discussion of the future meeting locations, or is
yes, we're going to do that next.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was only wondering because of the CVE's offer to provide us with a toxics tour, a statewide toxic tour. So I don't know if that's something that we should kind of add to that item and then also discuss for item number 9.
Yes, when we get to that list. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Alexis?
Building on Lizette's suggestion, as we schedule future meetings in a particular location around the state, we could both have a tour of priority sites and communities in the vicinity of our hearing, and we could do, as was just suggested by Ms. Babich, we could also, within the Bagley-Keene noticing requirements and engagement requirements, we could be talking with community members in that context. So one of the things that we might do is try to schedule the locations of our meetings to marry up with our permit appeals, and then build around that other kinds of engagements, presentations perhaps. In the youth engagement side of things, we could meet at the end of a school day at a high school and engage with youth and talk with community members, and then go into the formality of our hearing. So there are many different ways to go about this within our legally noticed requirements that I think we would all embrace. And I don't have any additions to your priorities other than needing to put in there, we need to fairly soon get around our permit appeal procedures, because that will set the stage for hearing the permit appeals.
Thank you. I think that should be added as a separate bullet. It's lumped in there, I think, with permitting and something else. So this was designed prior to that appeal coming in. I thought we had a little more time, but thank you, Alexis. Sushma, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes. I'm not 100% clear on how we go about intaking community or engaging community members in each of the work streams we laid out earlier. It seems to me that there are inbound requests that will come in based on this meeting. Stakeholders may reach out to us. And then the only other opportunity for us to solicit input more actively is at the next meeting. So really other avenues for us to engage with the community members to make sure we progress all of the work streams that we've laid out earlier is the question.
I don't know how to answer that. specifically. Does someone want to help me out on that one?
Might offer some suggestion. In the capacity of working with the Office of Environmental Equity and not having an executive officer at this time, generally you could delegate that work to the executive officer. However, in not having one at this time, an option would be to work through our capacities of having engaged environmental justice communities in the past and leveraging those aspects. So I would encourage you to work through possibly Georgette and then on to with the Office of Environmental Equity to pursue those.
Thank you for that. And Greg, were you going to say something similar or different?
Yes, I just wanted to, it's okay to have contact with members of the public. However, you can't have contact with members of the public on matters before the board. So for a matter regarding permit appeals, for example, you definitely don't want to have contact with them. But on general matters under the board's jurisdiction, you certainly can. So I think Jessica's recommendation is fantastic.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, any other, okay, I think we're good. We've established those, pardon?
We do have a raised hand, so I don't,
sorry.
if you'd like to, sorry, from the public, if you would like to recognize that person.
Sure, and then we have Georgette as well.
Member Georgette, would you like to go first or allow the community member?
I'll allow the community member.
Thank you. So we have the phone number ending in 220 with a hand raised. We're recognizing you at this time. If you would please unmute yourself by pressing *6. You have 2 minutes to make your comment.
Hello, it's Chris Rowe again. I'm now on my cell phone. So I wanted to make a statement. As again, I live 5 miles from the Santa Susana Field Lab. I'm involved with the West Hills Neighborhood Council and a number of the neighborhood councils in the area who have voted historically on the cleanup of the Santa Susana cleanup of the Santa Susana Field Lab. So for example, we wanted a risk-based cleanup. There are a number of nonprofits that are pushing for what's called a cleanup to background. My concern is that if you have meetings with just environmental groups, they are pushing their agenda, which is the strictest cleanup, and the misinformation that I referenced earlier about nuclear meltdowns and cancer clusters. And so I feel that you have to be careful who you invite to these meetings and do outreach to other people than these known environmental groups, many of which, by the way, I donate to or have donated to historically, but I don't want them to represent me because I have dedicated since 2006 my time to the Santa Susana Field Lab cleanup, and I believe I know more than most stakeholders about that site. And that's why I wouldn't want these nonprofits speaking on my behalf. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, Georgette.
So I just want to allude to what Greg said. So if I'm starting to formulate, and I'll reach out to the department, but if we're trying to formulate a proposal on how to move forward with our environmental justice advisory group, would it be okay to reach out to some of the community organizations to be able to formulate a proposal that can be brought forward to the board?
Yes. Again,
Okay.
as long as it's not a matter pending before the board in an administrative proceeding, you're fine.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
And I'd just like to make a follow-up comment for the people who've taken the time today to comment and are obviously fully engaged, to be sure that we have your contact information. And I think Jessica could repeat the email address. That would be so helpful if you could email us at that address with your issue, where you are, and then we can ensure that the appropriate member of the board has that for follow-up. So Jessica, can you remind people what the email address is? Since I
Yes, it is DTSC public meeting at dtsc.ca.gov.
Okay, thank you. And we'll soon have an info at Board of Environmental Safety or something like that once we launch the website. But in the interim, we're getting this, we're patching together the support. So thank you. Okay, well, that was another robust conversation. Now, item 9 is going to flip with item 10. It's a housekeeping. Greg, you have your hand up?
I do. I wanted to go back to one matter real quick, and that is just to say that if the board was to entertain doing a tour of sites, it's going to create some challenging Bagley-Keene issues regarding notice and accessibility, things like that. So that's going to have to be kind of vetted, and we need to figure out a way to make that happen if the board really wants to do that. That's going to be a challenge for us.
And I think something to put in your bonnet to think about. If it's the whole board, that's one thing. If it's 2 board members, that's something else. So if it's not a board meeting going in full, might we think about it differently for if we want to or need to? So bearing that in mind, it's not ideal, but we could have a combination of those 2 methodologies. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So rather than discuss, sorry.
Madam Chair, we do have one other attendee who would like to comment on this agenda item.
Thank you.
And would you like to
yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. Cynthia Babbage, you now have the floor. Would you please state your name and any affiliation for the record?
Cynthia Babbage, founder and director, Del Amo Action Committee, coordinator for the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network. I would like to remind the board that many of us have participated during the internal review process that led to this board. Speaking for myself, we were against this board's formation, not you in particular, please do not take it personal, but because there wasn't a solid seat on the board for an environmental justice advocate. And so I think there's a lot of conversations that have happened over the last 6 years that you should hear from. And I don't mean that we need to take another 6 so that you can hear everything verbatim, but we have some real issues and some real concerns. And so while you're getting formed and making sure you have the support that you need, I hope that you would try and do your own research or reach out to find out what some of these big hiccups were. Because for some of us, we are participating, we are watching, but we're still feeling like we got rolled over by the bus. We weren't heard. Advocates had a bigger voice than the communities did. And so now we have a board before us. We support you. We want to help. We want to make things better. But we also want to have recognition of the road that's been traveled by a lot of us. And so while it's wonderful that people can organize a bus tour and things of that nature, they have the capacity, please remember that you need to help the community, folks. So you have some excellent people on your staff. I think Alexis had some really great ideas about how you can include more of the community voices, and other people, you know, are happy to help, but just try and resist the urge to take the easy path. And don't forget that some of us are still very skeptical. Sorry, I went over, Jessica.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Okay. Anything else, Jessica? Any other hands raised or?
We do not have any other hands raised at this time. Did you have your hand up to comment on this or?
No? Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. So that didn't require a vote, luckily. We're now in housekeeping, where what I'd like to do is what was item 10, and establish May 19th in Sacramento for our first in-person board meeting, at which time we will bring a proposal. So that means we all have work to do before the posting deadline. We will bring a proposal for future meeting sites. Now, we're obligated to have a total of 6. And they need to be done pretty much before Thanksgiving, otherwise nobody will be around to have them. So if we meet on May 19th, how many meetings can we have? Are we willing to have? We know that we have to have at least 4 more. We may want to have more than 4 more. So we need to have a calendar proposal for our 2022 at least meetings adopted at the May 19th meeting, because you have to have a meeting to say when you're going to have a meeting. So this meeting today is for us to say May 19th, because I don't think any of us are prepared to set the whole calendar or the locations. So can we agree? Can I have a motion for May 19th in Sacramento as the next meeting?
Motion.
Georgette, so moved. Second, Alexis. Can we call the vote, Jessica?
Would you like any public comment? I don't see any hands raised, but would you like to provide?
Sure. Sorry, my apologies.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we will invite public comment regarding board's proposed May 19th meeting that will be held in person in Sacramento. So we invite you at this time to raise your hand. When you would like to, if you're joining in from the call-in number, you will press *9 to unmute, or *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Okay, I have phone number, last 3 digits, 220. You have the floor. Please again state your name and affiliation for the record.
Hello, it's Chris Rowe again. So as far as your meeting in Sacramento goes, I do realize that the COVID precautions are getting better, but the Omicron variant BA2, I believe it's called, seems to be getting more contagious. And so I would hope that all the meetings that you hold for the rest of the year would be hybrid meetings. In other words, you may have in-public meetings, but please continue your Zoom capability at these remote meetings so that people like me can attend. Even if you were in my community right now, I do not go because of my concerns for the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't go into public venues. So I would really appreciate hybrid scenario for Zoom public meeting spaces for not only my protection, but for the protection of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And that is the only hand that we have at this time. And I will go to our Spanish interpreters to see if we have any from our Spanish call-in line. Thank you. We have no comments from the Spanish line. Madam Chair?
Yes, my understanding about the location in Sacramento is the capacity for webcasting, and that's different than Zoom. Webcasting is just what we're doing is being put out for people to observe. And I don't know what the capacity is to do a hybrid. I apologize that I don't know. I don't know if any staff can, DTSC staff can comment on that, or if we need to take it into consideration as we're developing the May meeting and see what's possible. The idea of gathering in one location and having people be able to interact seemed to be of great interest, but I also understand being COVID conscious to the max myself. I appreciate the comment. Alexis?
Madam Chair, I think that the comment and your interests intersect nicely our governance requirements that we're going to take up at that May 19th meeting in Sacramento talk about how we're going to hold our board meetings and notice our board meetings per Bagley-Keene, which means they'll be publicly accessible. They will have live audio. They'll have the notices, agenda, and minutes on the website and allow for the public to address the board and so forth. I think that the experience I've had in the meeting room that we're planning to use at Cal EPA is that all of the above can be accommodated and that it will work as intended.
Thank you. Thank you. Knowledge is power. You know, when somebody knows something, it's really helpful. Thank you for that. Let's, bearing that in mind, are there any other comments or discussion or input or feedback?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, so at this time, we know that there will be a call-in number available for the public. We will work to have Zoom capabilities, but it will certainly be webcasted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm glad we opened that up and had that commentary so we could have clarity. Bearing that in mind, did I ask for, I asked already, for May 19th, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further board discussion? Can you call the vote, please, Jessica?
I sure can. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeannie Rizzo?
Yes.
Sushma Bhatia?
Yes.
Georgette Gomez?
Aye.
Alexis Strauss-Hacker?
Aye.
Lizette Ruiz?
Aye.
5 ayes, no nays, and no abstentions. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So flipping back to item 9, which is really something we've been talking about throughout the meeting, and that is how many more meetings will we have? Will we have 4 more after Sacramento, or 5 or 6? Do we want to go to monthly meetings? There are boards that do that. I'm very conscious and want to say publicly for everyone who's listening in, the board members, except for myself, are all half-time. So the capacity to overload the work that they will be doing and the work that they will be doing on board for board meetings we have to evaluate that, take that into consideration. Can we do more than 6? Do we want to do more than 6? And where might we want to have them? So one of the conversations was basically to hear from the board about any input on board meeting locations and to hear from the public. We also are encouraging the public to email us with their thoughts. We've already heard a couple of location ideas, a couple of sites that we need to take into consideration as we're planning to announce a calendar and discuss a calendar in May. So does the board want to discuss this first or hear more public comment first?
This is Liz. I had a concern regarding time and would like to ask the audience for input on times. I know that as a community member, my biggest strife with a lot of these kinds of meetings has been the time as somebody who's had a 9-to-5 job and who's hasn't always had a flexible job to attend meetings, important meetings like this. I would like to know whether or not it would be easier for the audience to increase its participation if we change the time.
Can I just clarify, by change the time, you mean evening?
Moving it up at least.
Yeah, moving it to later in the afternoon into the evening. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Do other board members have thoughts about that? There's kind of nodding. Okay, well, we talked about the other option that we talked about was having different, not setting, the board always meets 1 to whatever, rotating times, so that over the course of our 4 or 5 or 6 next meetings, now the agendas are the agendas, so it may not always be convenient. But Jessica, did you have your hand up to comment on that?
Sorry, Sushma was unmuting, so I wanted to
okay.
make sure I had an opportunity.
Good job, Sushma.
Yes, I was I'm hoping to hear also from the public. I think I second Lizette's point about let's be flexible and see what the community wants. And also to your point, Madam Chair, that I'm open to evening meetings, morning meetings, maybe rotating days of the week to see what works for the community.
Thank you. I will say that I did hear that Fridays are not a good day. Just generally speaking. So, and we also have, we have some budgetary considerations, and I haven't dug into the budget yet to understand how much money do we have for meetings, but I'm being reminded that we'll need to track that. We also have for this year, which I have to understand whether we can carry it over. We have some salary savings since people didn't come on board January 1st. The earliest, I think, was when I swore in on February 11th, and then all of you later in the month. And then we also haven't hired our staff yet. So it may be that we have some flexibility on capacity to, because we'd all have to travel, right? And you're going to have one overnight. No matter what time you have the meeting, you're going to wind up more than likely, depending on the location, an overnight. So we have to think about the budget for that and the timing for that. So these are all things to consider. But why don't we see if we have any public comment on this? And I'm really going to encourage emails with suggestions as well. Do we have any public comment, Jessica?
Thank you, Chair Rizzo. We will now hear public comment for the board's future meetings. So we invite you at this time to raise your hands from the Zoom toolbar or press *9 to raise your hand if you are calling in on the English line. When you are called upon, you will press *6 to unmute. We will take comments from the Spanish line after the raised hands. If you have joined our Spanish line, please wait for instructions from our interpreter. Again, email address is dtscpublicmeeting@dtsc.ca.gov. So each commenter will be given 2 minutes. Those joining by Zoom will see the timer on their screen. And for those joining by phone, we'll let you know when there are 30 seconds remaining and when the timer expires. Time allotted for our participants joining in Spanish will be doubled. So at this time, I do have a hand raised from Cynthia Babbage. You are now recognized and have the floor. Please again state your name and affiliation for the record.
Cynthia Babbage, founder and director of Del Amo Action Committee, coordinator for the LA Environmental Justice Network. I think that was a really good question that Lizette brought up. And I think it's very hard to answer because oftentimes people who are working all day have responsibilities when they get off work to get their family together, and it's hard to, what are you going to do with the kids? So I do think that that evening meetings are important, but maybe you could consider doing something on the weekends. And I would also say that depending on the topic is what gets people there. And the more that you can do upfront outreach or work with the community groups in the area where you want to go to get the word out, I think that will be helpful, because right now a lot of people are just watching and they're I don't think they have high expectations. So reach out to the groups that you already know and let us help you, based on your agenda, try and bring people to the table. But it is hard for people just to do from, you've been on the line now, almost 4 hours. And so that would not work for somebody when they're coming off work. So I hear what you're saying, Lizette, and it's really important, but let's try and get more creative. And I also think, unfortunately, for half-time or full-time, there's a lot of work that has to be done this first year, and I'm not telling you anything. So I would say you need to try and have as many meetings as possible and just try and organize them so you can get the most out of them, and so that you start building the relationship with the communities that are going to help serve you in this process. And then as things wane down a little bit, then you can have less meetings. But that would be my 50 cents worth.
Thank you for your comment. Rabina Sowell, you now have the floor. Please State your name and affiliation for the record.
Hi, my name is Rabina Sewell. I'm the Executive Director of California Safe Schools. And I had heard you speak about the potential of working closely with students, if I understood that correctly. And to the degree that we can be a conduit and help in that manner, we're more than happy to assist you. And I also just wanted to say, thank you to the board chair and the board members for your very thoughtful and sincere and your attention during this meetings. I haven't seen anyone on their cell phones. You seem very interested in the comments that have been made today. The very last issue that I just want to raise, to the degree that you can, you talked about the budget. Many of the agencies, I understand that you're a board, but maybe DTSC can go beyond and assist you with this. But many of the groups that do attend these meetings may not receive funding in the manner of like hundreds of thousands of dollars like other groups do. And so to the extent that there might be stipends for students or community members in EJ communities, I think that would be very thoughtful and important if you could consider that. And so again, thank you for this opportunity to comment, and we wish you all the best going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. So that concludes our comment period for this section. And if you would still like to provide your comment, again, we all encourage you to email us at dtscpublicmeeting@dtsc.ca.gov to give us your feedback about where and when and what days work for the board's public meeting. And I turn it back now to Chair Rizzo. Madam Chair, just a point of order. Member Georgette stated that she would have to take her leave at this time.
Yes, so I thank you for that. Georgette, do you have any closing comments? I can switch quickly to closing remarks, anything that you want to put in the record, say before you take off, and then we'll go back to the action items, which I will then ask Alexis to just email those to you afterwards, so that you have that reminder as well. Georgette, do you have anything before you have to hop?
Yeah, apparently my dog has some statements to give to you, all of you. But no, I just want to say thank you. I'm definitely very excited to be here in this journey with all of you, with the community. We're hearing constantly, right? There's a dire need for this, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. Just know that I'm very committed to ensure that we're doing the work that we need to do to heal some of our communities and be responsive to the issues that are being brought forward. So I'm looking forward to the work. I know we have a lot of work ahead of us, but it sounds like there's a lot of commitment. So thank you.
Thank you, Georgette. Appreciate you. We retain a quorum even as Georgette leaves, which is good, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to adjourn, and then we'd be here all night waiting for a quorum. So the next item on the agenda is a review of action items that we've asked Alexis to keep a running list of, which will, so let me turn it over to you, Alexis.
I'm ready to do that, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask procedurally, how shall we assemble input from board members on the possibilities of future meetings? I would be happy to try and compile that, but I don't want to trigger a Bagley-Keene serial meeting. So is there someone that we should email suggestions to, or is there a way you'd like to handle it before I recap our action items?
We don't have an executive officer who ordinarily would be doing this, right?
Right, and I'm happy to do it. I just don't want to trigger a serial meeting with individual communications with each board member on this topic.
On the same topic.
Yeah. It should go through a staff, so.
Okay. We can determine that outside of the meeting, and then we'll notify Alexis at that time which member Alexis, which staff she will be reaching out to.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. That's the DTSC staff stepping up for us. Thank you very much. Okay, do you want to run through the action items? And then the last item is our final remarks and adjournment.
And I'll prepare these as a document. I will send them to the DTSC, to the board clerk today and support staff. I'm going to start with what we have tentatively proposed for the May 19th agenda in Sacramento. At this point, we are likely to discuss the statutory governance document. We may be ready to, depending on legal support, add ex parte language to the operational guidelines. Thirdly, we're going to discuss with DTSC how we can be prepared for permit appeals. You know, which ones are on the horizon procedurally, administratively, what do we need to do? Fourth, we're going to have a public discussion on the board members' activity leads, our areas of emphasis. And Chair Rizzo, you had said you wanted a vote on that at that time. But I think what we're looking at is really each of us amplifying what we're going to do in the next few months, having public input, and then having board discussion. Next, we're going to talk about the ombudsperson's responsibilities. We're going to talk about the hiring status, and we're going to talk about our calendar and location of meetings. So that is a package around the May 19th agenda in Sacramento. It is not necessarily exclusive of anything else that, Madam Chair, you may wish to propose with our 10-day notice requirements. Going back, the other action items we have, I'm grouping a few of them around the topic of permit appeals, and they are as follows. Sushma had made a comment that gets into the process that we develop for hearing permit appeals and how we would be briefed up by staff, by the appellant, by no doubt the facility and others, and we will come to that. Deputy Director Negri had talked about the process for permit appeals and noted the particular Quemetco appeal that will come before us. Georgette had asked that we be clear about the timing that we would have to respond to permit appeals and getting enough time for input. And then Sushma had brought it back into her area of emphasis, which is the metrics of permit appeals. Can DTSC brief us up on what it has been to date and how we might structure that? So those are all in the wheelhouse of permit appeals. Procedurally, as we go forward in setting an agenda, Georgette had suggested that we have public comment occur before we have board discussion. Next action item, the operational guidelines, we amended and adopted 5 aye votes. And then we discussed each board member's and the chair's areas of emphasis, and we voted on me being the DoD liaison. Lastly, we talked about the chair's priorities, which really encompassed all of us as board members' priorities. I had a list of about 8 there that you had articulated, Madam Chair. And that wraps up our action items.
Wow. Okay. Now, thank you, Alexis. While you have the floor, do you want to make a closing comment for the record and for the public? Or Jessica, did you have something? You look like I'm supposed to do something.
Quickly, we do have a public member who would like to be recognized for a comment. If you would like to recognize.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Phone number ending in 220, you have the floor at this time. Please press *6 to unmute. Phone number ending in 220, you have the floor at this time. Okay, so at this time, we ask that you email your final comment to us at dtscpublicmeeting at dtsc.ca.gov. We are unable to hear you at this time. Again, please email us your comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexis, do you have a parting comment? So everybody unmute so you're ready to speak.
Yeah, indeed. I wanted to thank our DTSC colleagues who did so much to get us to this meeting in March. really just within a month of our being sworn in. And I think it's such an accomplishment, such a hardworking team and so much preparation, and it bodes well for our work as a team going forward. So thank you all, and thank you to the public who from 1 o'clock until almost 5:30 have been here with us. We look forward to all we're going to accomplish this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexis. Lizette?
Yes, I want to ditto everything that was just said. I'm really grateful to DTSC staff for your thoroughness in working with us to prepare us for this meeting. And I'm also grateful to the public for all your comments and suggestions and offers to really help us within this process. We're definitely committed to working together and working to accomplish everything that has been said before us. And so, like I said before, I open myself to the public, to any input, any advice. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to working with everybody in this team, and it's really exciting work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizette. Sushma?
Huge thank you to DTSC for prepping us and for getting us to this place. Kudos to all of you. Also, huge thank you to Chris, Cynthia, Rabina, Ingrid, and there's so many members of the public. You were equally and more engaged with us today, and we heard you. We want your continued engagement in the future to make sure we deliver, and please hold us accountable. I think another thing that's not lost on me is that we have a huge responsibility in terms of building equity and trust back with the communities. That became really clear through the course of the day. And I think the way we do that is by doing all the things we are promising that we will do. So please hold us accountable. We also need to be transparent, which is a commitment we're making. What Lizette also was alluding to is being accessible. So we are accessible to you. Please reach out to us and guide us on how we can best deliver for you.
Thank you, Sushma. And Greg, I want to thank you for being counsel. Do you have any comments you want to make as we wrap up this meeting? Was this one of like your favorite meetings ever, or do you have any?
Absolutely one of my favorite meetings. Thank you very much for making me a part of it. This has been a historic day, and it's been a true pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Same here. Jessica, our super facilitator. I can't even say the word clerk for you. It has to be, there's got to be like super clerk or something. You were amazing today. And there is a slide that we will put up with the names of all the staff who worked on this meeting. And part to give you a sense of the volume, the sheer volume of commitment of staff hours that went into helping us do this. So if I can have a motion to adjourn. Does anybody want to adjourn, or do you just want to keep going?
This is Liz Ruiz. I would like to adjourn. Or move to
And a second. And as we go into the final vote, all in favor, just assume we have a consensus of 4. Yes, everybody's saying aye. And here's next. Here's a list of the staff that worked on this event. And I think it's important for the public and all of us to be reminded of their incredible work. So I thank the Spanish interpreters and the personnel at DTSC who, from every office across the agency, that were here to support us in this meeting. So thank you all. And I think we say good night. Yes? Okay. And is there a wrap up of any kind, or what happens next, Jessica?
I'll reach out to you regarding following up.
Okay, great. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.